Welcome everyone to Tech Forum 2020, or Tech for Good, as we're calling it today. My name is Peter Sandberg and I'm the CEO of the Swedish Chamber of Commerce for the UK. Now, today's event was supposed to be physical and it was also supposed to be in June, but as the world is, we too are virtual this time. We're nonetheless super excited to have, 300-400 of you joining us today, and we hope you'll all be active participants in today's proceedings. For those of you who don't know the Swedish Chamber of Commerce, we're a business platform founded in 1906. So we have just about, little over a century behind us. We were founded by businesses, for businesses, and we create platforms sort of like this, connections, and we promote the Swedish-British Business Link and its community. We help businesses establish, grow, and develop. As do our friends at the Swedish Chamber of Commerce across the world, of which many of them are actually joining us here today. Our community is really what is manifested today. And coming to today, we will hear from some fantastic people today. I mentioned we were founded in 1906. Well, in fact, one of our keynotes was a founding member, Ericsson. So a true sign of a business that has managed to transform over a century. So while some speakers represent century-old businesses, but modern by all means, some of them are newly born in comparison, infants even if you wish. Today's lineup includes speakers from tech companies at various stages, from startups to unicorns, VCs, investors, public bodies and trade organizations, large corporates in transformation, researchers, academics. The list is long, so I could go on forever. But we will all discuss tech as an enabler for good. How is technology and businesses tackling the fundamental challenges facing us today? And how can ideal-driven tech and conscious investments be used to drive real change? Today's event coincides with London Bootcamp. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, but it's a one-week accelerator program for Swedish tech in London. Something we host and run together with the Swedish Agency for Economic and Regional Growth and the UK's Department for International Trade and other partners. This year's cohort, they're all with us this afternoon, so a special shout out to them, comprised of 23 exciting Swedish tech businesses looking to expand to or via the UK and probably beyond that. 10 of them, 10 have been selected for a final pitch. So stay tuned, listen to them, and vote for the best one at the very end of today's proceedings. Now, I want to say a few thanks to our sponsors and partners. I want to thank Danske Bank, long-term supporter of the Chamber, as is Goodwill, Ignition Law, Jämtland Härjedalen if you want to go skiing, and Zinn, which is a Swedish match brand. Also, huge thanks to our partners, the UK's Department for International Trade, which I mentioned, and the Swedish Embassy in London, Microsoft Reactor, Startup Sweden, the Swedish Agency for Economic and Regional Growth, the Swedish Energy Agency, Vinnova, and all of our partnering chambers of commerce. Now, that's a lot of partners, but in all essence, it does take a village to pull something like this off. Now, I have the real pleasure of introducing our Master of Ceremonies today. So, Amalia Darwiz, she is UK MD of Microsoft for Startups, which you may be familiar with. They support the best tech startups and help them grow with Microsoft muscles to support. Prior to this, Amalia was CEO of Code First Girls, an award-winning training company focused on increasing diversity in tech, something we all can stand by. Amalia was awarded an MBE in the 2019 UK Honours List for her services to diversity and training in the tech industry as well. Amalia, it is with great pleasure that I hand over to you, and I wish you the best of luck, and I hope you all enjoy the afternoon, and I see you in a bit.
Thank you so much, Peter. What a pleasure to be joining. And indeed, we can't be here in person, but we're absolutely here. And we have some really fantastic panels for you today. And really talking around those ideas around tech for good, something which you can imagine it's very close to my heart, and so excited to be exploring what role technology has to play in balancing that impact of, you know, the wonders of technology with helping society and actually giving something back as well. So we do have, as mentioned, an amazing panels and some talks lined up for you today, as well as our London Bootcamp startups. You can find out more about all of those actually if you go onto the website here. So you can check out this QR code or go directly to the website www.scc.org.uk/event/tech-forum. And you can find there not only the information about the agenda, but also all of the profiles of our fantastic speakers today, as well as information about the companies in the London Bootcamp as well. We have 4 keynotes and 4 panels and covering some amazing topics ranging across technologies for the future, as well as tech as an enabler for good. And very excitingly, with those London Bootcamp companies, we're also going to have an opportunity for you to vote. So get your fingers ready. We're going to be doing the votes through the app, through the Zoom app itself. So if you're watching here, you'll be having that opportunity to vote, and we'll give you some more information about when that opens up so that you can make your voices heard there as well. Fabulous to do that. Right, on to our first keynote of the day then, please, and our panel as well. So our first speaker to kick us off today, the fantastic Mariella Lindgren, who is the Ericsson UK and Ireland CEO, and she's going to be talking to us about 5G as an enabler, obviously very current topic for all of us. And then we've got a fantastic discussion, which is talking about technologies shaping the future, followed by a little break there as well. So first of all, let's go over then to Mariella. Hi, Mariella. How are you doing today?
Hi, Amalie. I'm good, thank you. How
Fabulous.
Are you?
Very, very well, thank you. Here, really excited, obviously kicking off everything here as well. So Mariella, you know, you are the CEO of Ericsson UK and Ireland. What an amazing job that must be. You support telecom operators and service providers in the communications industry. And from what I understand, you joined Ericsson in 2000. You've held many different senior roles across the industries within organizations, as well as heading up multiple project management organizations in Sweden as well. What an amazing CV. Over to you, Mariella, for what is going to be our kickoff talk there as well.
Thank you very much, Amalie. And hello, everyone. I don't think I need to introduce Ericsson as a company. So what I instead will do is jump straight into the topic of the day, and 5G as an enabler for technology for good. Technology for good is something that Ericsson firmly believes in. And I will start with a little bit of a background, because I don't know exactly how much everyone in the audience today knows about 5G, but I'll bring you up to speed. So I would say it's safe to say that developed economies around the world have experienced slow productivity growth over the last decade, and enterprises therefore have invested heavily in digitization to become more agile and to support stronger growth. I would say that digitization is the biggest opportunity that there is for all tech companies, and 5G has a really big role to play in digitization. 5G is the first G that from the outset was built to serve both consumers and industries. And it combines ultra-low latency, high reliability with an incredible speed. And all this is needed for new use cases. And to give an example of what is meant with ultra-low latency, it is less than 10 milliseconds. So obviously not noticeable. And 5G will connect not only people, but it will connect everything. Cars to the roads that they are on, doctors to the medical devices of their patients. It will enable billions of new connections and make those connections secure and instantaneous. If we bring 5G together with other technologies like cloud and artificial intelligence, we can make some really amazing things possible. It is expected that the worldwide spend on technologies for digital transformation will reach £1.8 trillion in 2023. So of course, hence the hype. And add to that, with COVID-19, this will only accelerate the need for digitization and 5G. We all know about the urgent need of recovering economies, stay connected with families, healthcare, and behaviors have changed during this pandemic, and they won't change back. However, much of today's change has taken place over 4G and broadband. And today I want to show what will be possible when 5G is everywhere. So I thought we would look a little bit at some use cases. Imagine these situations. You are 5 minutes away from a ruptured spleen, but 20 miles away from the hospital and a doctor. If this is you or a loved one, I'd say everything is getting a bit urgent. And none of us, or I would say not all of us, live next door to a hospital. And as always, when a patient is in a critical condition, every minute counts to save lives. In the UK, we have, together with British Telecom and the NHS, developed something we call the 5G connected ambulance. So imagine if a surgeon can save valuable time by already starting to examine the patient in the ambulance, making sure the patient gets directed to the right hospital, but also with the right preparations already made before they arrive. With 5G, this is possible because we could, for example, do a remote ultrasound. It can be performed in the ambulance by the paramedic, but controlled and steered by a surgeon in a hospital. It works in the way the paramedic would use a haptic glove, which can be steered remotely by vibrations that go over 5G real-time, low-latency connections to the ambulance. So these vibrations will show the paramedic where to move the ultrasound so the surgeon can see exactly what they need to see. And high-resolution imaging is then sent real-time over a secure 5G connection. We would also have a 5G high-definition camera in the ambulance, and thereby the doctor or the surgeon can actually see patient reactions real-time from the examination. This, of course, will save lives as surgery prep happens already in the ambulance, and is something that 5G will enable. It's not only healthcare that will benefit from 5G. If we look at utilities, there is a lot to gain. And imagine that you don't have access to something as essential as water. Those necessities we just can't live without, and any damage is extremely disruptive. Ducts and pipes, etc., in massive water systems on the ground can be really tricky to understand and to know what is where. So Ericsson, O2, and Northumbrian Water have worked together to improve services for 2.7 million customers. And this is by 5G-enabled augmented reality maps that will allow experienced technicians to remote guide on-the-ground teams through very complex tasks by relaying real-time data and instructions. So SCAR's experts, they can join one single call remotely, advising teams on the ground. And this can also, it can cover 50,000 kilometers of water mains and pipes. And it can also remove hazards, avoid risks real-time, but it improves productivity, efficiency, and safety. So there are some really exciting opportunities. Logistics is another really exciting space for 5G. And we have been working together with some ports, both in the UK and Italy, to show how 5G, cloud, and artificial intelligence can automate a port. Now, why do we need to automate a port? I think we all saw this as the world started looking down in Q1 this year, and we all went online. The global shipment and supply chains became overloaded. E-commerce grew exponentially, and the ports became really loaded. We started to see huge delays, but with 5G, we can increase productivity. Ports are mission-critical infrastructure, so they really need super high security. They need ultra-low latency, real-time connections. In that way, you can safely manage cranes, robots. You can introduce robots, really, that can arrange cargo and goods in warehouses. You can even have autonomous vehicles that will arrange all the shipping between ships and storage facilities, and by that, you can increase productivity. And we saw in the work we did in Italy, as an example, that the 5G connectivity in that port, it cut operating expenses by as much as 55%, and it increased the productivity by 35%. But there's also another added benefit here, and that is safety for personnel, but also it brought CO2 savings of about 8% per year is what we're estimating. So I would say 5G is also an enabler for a greener technology, and that we for sure need. Another segment that is super interesting when it comes to digitalization and really can benefit from that. And we see as an opportunity when it comes to, quickly regaining the economical challenges that we have seen from COVID is in manufacturing. So we have a vision for a digital smart factory, and that is to quickly be able to reconfigure a fully automated production line for a variety of products. So what we want to achieve is as high utilization level as possible in the manufacturing plant. And this, in order to compensate, you can have peaks and troughs in demands for different products. But with this implementation, you will be able to reconfigure quickly and shift between different products and the production. So in order to achieve this goal, of course, we need maximum flexibility. We need to be able to move this robotic equipment, the goods components, around the factory floor. And at the same time, ensuring safety for all the employees that are looking after the plant. And there is really only one technology, one wireless technology, I should say, that can make this happen. And that is 5G. And the reason for this is that 5G has such a high reliability. We are talking about something we in telco say 6 nines. That means one message in a million is lost. And this ultra low latency that I talked about, which is less than 10 milliseconds. And this is needed to safely control robots wirelessly. So with that, of course, we can make the manufacturing plant much more agile, much faster, a lot of additional productivity output, which of course will benefit the economy. I mean, these were just a few very quick examples to show the positive impact that digitization and 5G is having, to show its potential to both cut costs, increase agility and productivity, improve safety for employees, really important, but also positively impact the environment. And I would like to leave you with a number, which I think is kind of impressive. It is actually estimated that mobile broadband Internet of Things 5G could benefit the UK economy by close to £330 billion by 2030. So I think all of these benefits together is really technology for good and something that we should all go after. I think I'll stop here for a second and see whether, Amalie, you have any comments or any questions for me?
I'm super excited, Mariella. You are living in the future, isn't it? To have technology at your fingertips and to be able to see what that potential is. I would love to dig into a few more things because obviously a lot of those things are around the industrial applications of 5G, which is super exciting. I'm an ex-engineer, so I find them particularly geeky and exciting. But I'd love to hear about the consumer side of things. All of us want the gadgets, right? How is this going to look in a consumer context? What are the consumer use cases?
Yes, that's a very good question, and something actually that I was hoping to talk to. Yeah, I think I might even have a picture to show you, but I don't know if I can get it up now. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I had a little bit too little time to talk about that before, but now answering your question, thank you. 5G will not only change the industry, of course, it will change consumer behaviors. And obviously, as with all the other Gs, there's a lot of new use cases coming with 5G. I would say we can look at the most advanced 5G society in the world, which is South Korea. There they have developed many new use cases, and they are already implementing them and using them live. Because they have started to deploy 5G and they come far. So their friends can join, for example, concerts together in virtual reality rooms. Obviously, you need to use a virtual reality goggles of some sort. You need a 5G connection. But then you can join these virtual concert rooms and see the concert as if you were all in the same location, but from home. And this is, of course, really cool and also helps people, especially in these COVID times, to remain social. The social distancing is taking its toll on many. So I think those type of use cases we see many, many more of. But the same will be possible for sporting events. And we're working a lot on not only making it possible to attend through virtual reality setup, but also add augmented reality, which can enrich an experience by best seat experience, different camera angles, and you can connect with friends and perceive to be in the same stadium, but from home. However, I am actually most excited about the potential it has in the space of education. And we are experimenting a lot with kind of augmented reality books, but I think the virtual reality learning is what has the biggest potential. You need, again, something like a mixed reality headset. But what is the really good thing here, and I'm especially passionate about it because I'm a visual learner, and there are a lot of visual learners out there. And what we can do, and to be very visionary, is you could, for instance, imagine that you transport a dinosaur into the classroom with virtual reality. That is possible. It is also possible to be able to touch it by using haptic gloves. And I mean, that experience would, of course, be unforgettable for any child. And this is just not a vision. It might sound a little bit extreme, but we actually have rolled out a 5G network with Coventry University, and it is being used to trial these virtual reality trainings for student nurses. So we're definitely getting there.
That's so exciting, Mariella. Well, I'm really excited to see all of that. Huge thank you. Really, really appreciate you taking that through and kicking us off on this exciting journey with 5G today as well. Thank you for today. And we're going to go on now to our next session here. We've got our first panel of the day, which is super exciting as well. And actually a really sort of pleasure for me to be introducing. I'm a little bit biased here, but it's actually one of my colleagues from Microsoft, the amazing Amy Boyd. So Amy, welcome today. Hi, lovely to see you. How are you doing today?
Very good, thank you.
Amazing.
So great to see the sessions are going so well.
I know. And, you know, lovely to see your face because I haven't seen you obviously in person for ages as well. So Amy is one of our senior cloud advocates at Microsoft, which is really, really exciting. They get to evangelize, obviously, all the exciting things that we do. She helps developers to learn, engage and build on Microsoft, our AI platform specifically, and has previously worked in many different areas, including data science as well. She holds a degree in computer science, has done research, completed project into natural language processing and machine learning as well. So really, really exciting areas and obviously very, very current for today. So Amy, over to you and your fantastic panel.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much. So yeah, we have this brilliant panel here. So welcome everyone. We're going to be talking about the technologies that are shaping the future. We're going to be talking about practical applications, but also how these are going to impact or already impacting society. So we don't necessarily want to hear from me, we want to hear from our amazing guests. So let me just quickly do some quick introductions for our guests. So I am joined by Harry Davies, who is an applied AI lead at TechNation. That's a UK government-backed network for UK's leading startups from seed stage all the way up to companies like Monzo, Skyscanner and Darktrace. And Harry gets to support all those startups that have AI at the heart of their product. So welcome, Harry. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Amy.
No worries. So we also have Andrea Spacapietra, and he is actually the head of digital services in the UK and Ireland for Ericsson. He gets to support service providers to deliver 5G networks and key software applications to automate, monetize and manage their operations. So welcome, Andrea. And then finally, we have Stephanie Hare. Stephanie is an independent researcher, a broadcaster, and also an author of a forthcoming book around technology ethics. So welcome everyone. As we said, in this session, we're going to be talking about technologies that are shaping the future. And there feels like there's so many, so we'll probably be able to cover them all. But we're going to be touching on practical applications, skills that are needed, and impacts on society that we live in. In the last few months, we've all seen a huge change given the global pandemic. And so we're likely to touch on the acceleration we've seen into the investigation of these future technologies. One area we've seen a huge importance on is communication. Being able to keep in touch with each other when we can't be physically in the same space is so important to us. So Andrea, can I pass it over to you first to kick us off? Can you tell us a bit more about the practical applications of future technologies and specifically within the communication space?
Absolutely. Thanks, Amy. So I'm quite excited. I see great opportunities to, improve the quality of life, but also lower the barriers to access essential services for all of us. And especially with developments of 5G technology that I would like to talk about. What makes 5G unique is that from the outset, it has been developed as a first generation mobile technology to serve both consumers and industries. It combines some unique elements like ultra low latency, less than 10 milliseconds, high reliability, 6 nines, and gigabit speeds. And if you combine that with complementary technologies such as cloud, mobile edge computing, AI, you really can make amazing things possible. So it's not just about connecting people, it's gonna be connecting everything. And it removes, as you say, the effect of distance. It can transmit over distance, not only data, video, but also senses, sensations, tactile, for instance, feelings. And therefore we can realize what we call the Internet of Senses, but also have access to skills wherever they are over geographical boundaries. So an Internet of Skills. I would like to just touch on some of the key applications to give you a practical example. I know my colleague Marielle Lindgren has already touched on some of those, but hopefully I can recap some key points. So let's start from health. And of course, it is quite topical in this period. We have, for instance, developed in the UK, in collaboration with the British Telecom and NHS, the 5G connected ambulance. In essence, this can be a lifesaver because the patients can receive specialized medical care already within the ambulance before even getting to the hospital. So thanks to the 5G connectivity, the remote doctor can run an ultrasound scan, can also do an examination using haptic feedback, which means that you can direct the patient to the best treatment center in good time. So this can really save lives. At the same time, we know that our social behaviors are changing, right? We are increasingly living online and keeping social distance. So those qualities of 5G are quite useful. And we have already some countries that are more advanced in 5G deployments, such as South Korea, where, for instance, friends can join virtual rooms wearing virtual reality goggles and be together for a concert. How many of us would like to be with friends and watch the favorite concert, the favorite music star? So that is kind of similar to the real experience and definitely goes a long way to help with the situation. The same can apply to sports, and in fact, you can enrich the user experience. You can add the different camera angles, the best seat experience, and you can still feel to be together with your friends. It's all based on clearly the extended reality you can create. On the other hand, I see a great potential also in education, which is very close to my heart. Making sure the future generations can really have a better learning experience. Again, if you are using extended reality, you can get visual learning. You can actually understand much better what any teacher is explaining. You can imagine to parachute a dinosaur in a classroom with children that can even feel and touch the animal. It's an unforgettable experience. And this is not just a vision. We have, in fact, in last June with Vodafone and the University of Coventry, deployed a solution that is being trialed to actually test this kind of technology for the learning of the nurse students. So I hope I gave you a couple of examples to visualize how good it can be, this technology, if used in the right way.
Definitely. I was going to say, I mean, all of them, resonate with many people, I'm sure, watching the stream. Certainly the 5 nines that you said, some kind of reliability. Whenever I'm doing these kinds of chats, I'm always like, oh, will my internet hold out? And will I still be able to stay connected? And so it's really interesting to hear where all of that is helping in society. But I wanted to move on, and Stephanie, if I can kind of bring you into the conversation here. So these future technologies are exciting: 5G, AI, Internet of Skills, as Andrea put it. That was fabulous. I like that phrase. But there is a greater conversation around whether progress in technology in all these different aspects of our lives are actually including everyone. I know you've done some work in this space. Can you tell us kind of some of your findings as well as some of your concerns?
Yeah, I was loving listening to Andrea talking about the way that you could have a 5G equipped ambulance and how that could transform healthcare. And then the way he ends it with the discussion of nurses being educated at the University of Coventry with using, again, sort of the latest technology. And that, both of those things, I think that's what we can all agree on is like the dream, right? Is like, you know, how do we optimize healthcare? How do we optimize education, particularly given the challenges that we're going to be in, not just for the next year or two, hoping that we get a vaccine and can roll it out to everyone, but for a while we have to kind of live like this. But I think also this pandemic has been a stress test that has shown us how vulnerable we are, not just to this virus, but to future viruses. So even if we get a vaccine for this and solve this problem, we may well have future things that could cause us to be needing technology to help us. So I think we've had a really interesting stress test and a case study for resilience, and things like 5G are fascinating in that respect. And they also therefore raise questions of data security, right? So is the Internet of Things equipped for what we're about to do to it? Is the Internet itself equipped for what we're about to do to it? And that also raises issues of how data vulnerabilities are not democratic. So some people are more vulnerable than others, right? And we see this when people go online and social media. So children obviously are a really important case study for who's vulnerable, not just educating them, but also just designing for them and with them in mind. So we would want to be thinking about that with 5G, and I'm sure the good people at Ericsson are, but it's just something for us all to think about. Education, obviously we're going to have kids online for school as much. Ed tech already poses so many ethical issues for children, the data that's being captured in their homes, but also, as you raised, you know, emotions, skills, behavior, whether or not the children are aware of that data that's being gathered and used on them, and the parents, are they aware of it? And what happens to that data? Is it retained? Does it get added to the National Pupil Database in some way or linked to it here in this country? And what happens when those children eventually reach adulthood? You know, is there some sort of nuke button that we just press that just deletes all of that to safeguard their privacy? Or does that data exist to potentially follow them for the rest of their lives, which again raises a cybersecurity risk if it were ever to be breached or leaked? So it's kind of interesting just thinking about that in those terms. And then, of course, we have a sort of asymmetry of knowledge and an asymmetry of power. So people who know about data protection, privacy, and security may be taking different steps to protect themselves or their businesses or the people that they love than people who are just trustingly going online. Again, kids being a great example of this, but not the only one. The elderly, I think, are a risk as well.
Yeah,
a vulnerable population that we perhaps need to have a more targeted education approach to help protect them from fraud and other abuses. And just getting a sort of national conversation even about access. So who has access to broadband? Who has access to Wi-Fi? Who has access to 5G as it rolls out? Those are not neutral questions. So the technology ethics aspect of all of this is something that is both democratic and that it involves every citizen in our country and resident and visitor, but profoundly undemocratic and that it doesn't have an equal impact on the population.
Gosh, and you bring up so many incredible points. I hope the audience are noting all of these down avidly. Do share those notes with me. It's interesting. One thing that just triggered me then was when you said, does this data follow them for life? And I know that I was in education when the social media boom started happening, and it was fascinating when you started to leave school and apply for jobs, or you were applying to universities and it was like, tidy up your social media, as if you can take it away from the internet. It's permanent, people, like, you know, be careful about what you post. And that became quite a skilling piece. Like I had to be taught that in some senses, and there's some great programs out there that do a lot of this kind of stuff for everyone in society. But you're absolutely right. So do you see skilling as something that is an action maybe we all need to take as people who do understand this type of technology?
I think there's a skilling piece for sure, the education and skilling piece for how we educate people to use apps and anything online and what they're doing with their data and being really mindful of that. Mm-hmm. But that really puts a lot of responsibility, it's the onus on people, right? And again, that's about like who has the power in this equation. And actually, it's technologists like all of us who perhaps need to look at ourselves and go, well, how are we designing technology in the first place? So again, that case in point of, do we need to wait for lawmakers, for instance, to pass a law saying at the age of 18, any data you've collected on anyone, it's not anonymized, it's not pseudonymized, it's not aggregated in some fancy way, it is deleted, gone. You don't get to use it because we've decided to make a decision as a society to protect kids, or whatever thing that our lawmakers come up with. I'm not convinced our lawmakers themselves have the knowledge to pass a law in a way that would be framed in such a way that's mindful of these considerations. It might actually be on technologists to say, we ourselves recognize the power of the tools that we are building that can be used for good or potentially for negative. And we think the risks are so high around, for instance, children or the elderly or mentally incapacitated, people who are very ill, etc., that we protect their data ourselves without waiting for regulators and lawmakers to ask for it, or for consumers to advocate for change that they might not be aware enough to know to ask for that change. We know it.
Yeah. Oh, no, that's perfect. And this is a type of topic we need to unpack in way more than 20 minutes. So everyone go check out Stephanie's stuff. I know I'll certainly be reading up after it, because there's so much that, like you said, we need to be thinking about the design as people are creating it. And actually that needs to be nicely onto Harry. So Harry, you work a lot with startups, and with startups, we know from experience, right, they shake the foundations of what we believe is the norm of technology at the moment, and they really think outside the box. What have you been seeing recently, maybe in the AI space, maybe wider, that is kind of impacting society and you're excited about?
Yeah, thanks, Amy. I think, as you say, I think we're going through a time of unprecedented change, and we've almost had the foundation shaken for us in many respects with what's happened over the past months. And that being said, I suppose it's a ripe environment for new innovation and new startups in this sort of world we find ourselves in. And I can imagine that over the next couple of years, we're going to see new ideas that would have been unthinkable 6 months ago. It's really at a time of such fast pace. And I think, as Steph was saying there, I think there needs to be caution there too. But I think we're also seeing some really interesting, positive things for good, I think, come out of the back of it too. And I think often we talk about technology in a very futuristic, far afield way. But I think really we're seeing technology now have a tangible and very short-term impact upon the immediate things we're facing. So COVID being one, and of course Brexit, which is fast approaching as well too, right? So everybody's forgotten about that. But
I was going to say, that one kind of has taken a backseat almost.
Exactly. So I think on the former, we're seeing companies like CausaLens, a new company but with 25 PhDs now, using really cutting edge AI and time series analysis to optimize bed allocation at the NHS, for example, and to look at the prediction of the spread of disease across the UK. We're seeing companies like Arcturus in Oxford, and they're using, I guess, a combination of AI and robotics to really, I suppose, have an automated drug discovery platform that vastly speeds up the time to finding a cure. And they're very much actively on the front line of, how do we put the UK at the forefront of finding a next vaccine for COVID? And we're really seeing startups play a leading role there. And I think even on Brexit too, I think there was a government estimate recently that said there will be over 250 million new trade declarations needed to be signed for cross-border trade by companies. And we're seeing new startups like Vector AI use computer vision and AI to sort of automate the processing of that paperwork 10 times faster. So I think we'll really see innovation at the cutting edge of that too. I think we're also seeing sort of existing trends accelerate. So that could be towards the future of work or towards emerging for new technology. And we were just talking about Hopin, the online video conferencing platform, and how they've gone from zero just over a year ago to raising 40 million now with a new US VC. So I think things that were starting to happen before COVID and before the last 6 months, I think we'll just see accelerate. And my final point was, I think still there's probably an increasing amount of examples where companies are looking at really deep-seated problems and using new technology to solve them. So we're seeing companies like Savest who are using AI to really look at understanding the impact of climate change. And I think in that area of net zero, waste management, disinformation online, diagnosing diseases like cancer, I think increasingly we're going to see compelling issues there coming from the startup scene.
That's so great. And yeah, I just want to thank you all, because I feel like we've had such a good, all sides of that conversation. Like, future technologies is exciting. We do need to there are concerns around it and things that we need to think about a little bit more as we're designing. And then we're having these people come in and shake up really the way that we think about things in good ways. So as a closing statement from you all, a quick 30 seconds if we can. If I was to say to you, technologies are shaping the future, but what actions can we all, including our audience, take to make sure that it's a good future for all? Let's start with Andrea again.
Yes, I would say it's all about collaboration, building the ecosystem of these innovation partners, and make sure that together we all collaborate to build the good from within the technology we develop.
Fantastic. And Stephanie, pass it over to you.
I think in terms of designing more ethical technology, we would want to come up with some sort of list of actions that could range from a Hippocratic oath for tech workers that's done on a voluntary basis to things that we would regulate and legalize and restrict. And then we would want to have metrics so that we could measure which of those ideas, which of those actions is most effective and which are just sort of nice to have and which are just don't even bother doing it. But what I would love to see is that laundry list of steps we can take and test to see if they're actually useful.
Love that. That is actionable. I mean, that would be incredible for everyone. And then finally, Harry, pass it back over to you.
I think it's really doing, what's in your power to improve diversity in tech for me. I think, we look at, last year, I think 1% of startup funding went to all-female teams, 0.5% to Black founders. And I think if we're talking about future for all, I think we want as many viewpoints and experiences in that as possible, shaping the future of our products and our services. So for me, it's doing what we can, I think, to improve diversity of those building these sorts of products.
Fantastic. So collaboration, actionable tasks for people to follow and understand, and then more diversity and inclusion within inside the space. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. Harry, Andrea, Stephanie, thank you for your time. We've looked into technologies that are shaping the future. And so now I'll hand back off to Amali for the next session.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Amy, for that really, really invigorating panel. And thank you all for bearing with us. A few gremlins in the system. We definitely do need that 5G. So we're going to go now to a little break to give you all a chance to stretch your legs. And then after that, we've got another two really incredible speakers joining us, as well as an incredible panel talking to transforming urban transport, a sharing model. So that's Bodil Eriksson from Volvo Car Mobility, who's going to be joining us for that. We're then going to be talking transforming the local high street. So back to local with Nick Bradbury at Near Street. And then finally wrapping up before our next break will be a panel discussion looking at the impact at the core of the model of business as well, obviously a big part of Tech for Good. So thank you very much for joining us for this first part, and a few minutes break, and we'll be back soon.
The Swedish Spirit Summit is about bringing the two business communities of Sweden and the UK together.
So we were discussing a lot around the evolution of leadership, what it means to be a great leader, and how you can deliver great bottom line and great profit, as well as really maintaining that trust and building that vision and that purpose for every member of your organisation.
So coming together today with like-minded people provides a great platform to continue that discussion.
When you're entering a new market, it's important that you can focus your time on the things that you're best at, that bring real value to your new business. Goodwill gives you time to do that by taking care of all the non-core business activities and making sure you're compliant with UK regulations.
Our team at Goodwill help businesses from around the world enter the UK market, and here are our top 5 tips for setting up in the UK. Jumping in too quickly or with the wrong business structure can become an expensive mistake. Everything takes longer than you think, so be prepared and don't give up too soon. Have agreements in place to protect you in case things go wrong. The best retail space, talent and ideas for services and products can be snapped up before you know it. Meet with people who understand the UK, both from a business perspective and a cultural one. Goodwill have extensive experience helping businesses set up in the UK and is a great place to start.
Welcome back, everyone. And I'm sure you found that first part as riveting as I did. What fantastic discussions to kick us off for today. We're going to be moving on now with some even more amazing discussions. So we've got Bodil Eriksson from Volvo Car Mobility, who's going to be taking us through transforming urban transport, a sharing model. We've got Nick Brackenbury from Near Street, who's going to be talking about transforming the high street. So that real idea around going back to local. And then finally, wrapping up with the panel discussion, talking about impact at the core of the business model. So going on to our next speaker, welcome Bodil. Lovely having you joining us today. How are you?
I'm good, Amalie, and lovely to be joining you this afternoon. And hello, everyone joining.
Likewise. How exciting. And Bodil, you are the CEO of Volvo Car Mobility. So you get to play with some really exciting toys there, I think, really, isn't it? So you lead the development of M, which is Volvo's new shared mobility solution, and also looking at the sort of the re-emergence of Volvo cars in the US market. That must be very exciting. You've got nearly 3 decades of experience in executive management positions, including industries as pharma, oil, food and insurance. So a really sort of amazing history there. And I know you're going to be talking us through some really interesting topics there as well. So over to you, Bodil.
Thank you so much, Amalie. And hello again, everyone. I'm so happy to have this chance to share the story of Volvo Car Mobility and what we have done with M so far. My plan is to talk you through a little bit what we have learned as we have developed a new service from really a clean sheet of paper, providing access to cars a few hours a day or a weekend and the occasional week of vacation. So when we started the company, which is a standalone unit to Volvo Cars 3 years ago, we asked ourselves, what will the trends be that will be impacting consumers, societies, and the mobility space? So in 10, 15 years like that, zooming out, what did we see? Well, we landed on some well-known trends, urbanization, climate change, environmental awareness, and also digitalization. Now, none of these trends, of course, are new to you or were new to us, but I think what we really have seen is those trends becoming truly personal for each and everyone as we are taking steps as consumers and individuals to change our behaviors because of these trends, whether it's awareness for the climate or just convenience. So we see consumers looking increasingly for options to choose access over ownership. And that is something that Volvo Cars is embracing, these new consumer preferences. People don't need to own to use, and that's a huge thing for the automotive industry, obviously. Now, technology is making services available that was not possible only a few years back. But what is happening in the mobility space? Well, this is really what we dug into and looked. And as we defined our concept, we outruled mobility solutions aiming at solving short trips within a city, because the cities we spoke to around Europe and North America really spoke about a future which so much built on a green vision. And we felt that providing more cars into that really already cramped space is not a good proposition. But instead, we wanted to focus on medium distance trip, which is really where we find the way we use cars when owning one. And also, interestingly, this is a space where there has been quite little innovation. So we have been obsessed around the customer experience from day one, and we decided to also take a really data-driven approach regarding customer experience. We are in touch with a large number of users every month, every day, in many, many ways. We invite them for clinics and dialogues around feature development. We have the chat in the very app, and of course an integrated customer care. But most importantly, we developed the service in iteration with users, small steps improving. So as part of our exploration, we tried basically all concepts available on the market, and I personally gave up my car to live only with mobility solutions, and that was a huge eye-opener for me. I had no idea the way I was with my car and how difficult it was to really live with the available mobility solutions out there. And we quickly learned a couple of things. Firstly, a lot of consumers are really open to change and want to see an alternative to ownership, basically because they use their cars so few times living in the cities where there are other options for transport. No concept that we looked into were really embraced to focus on becoming an alternative to ownership. And neither was any concept in the market really good in all aspects across the customer experience. And they were quite alike. And that is, of course, because many of them use the same third-party software, which brings little differentiation to the user. At this point, we then zoomed in and developed our service in these quick iterations with users during 1 year. And our users, they taught us so much, both about the service, the experience, but also the way they use the cars. And understanding what it would take to make a really flawless experience led us to say no to the normal approach of static booking systems or booking schedules, or simply showing supply. Instead, we have developed a platform designed to understand the user's need. And the app may look very simple as we ask 3 questions. Where do you need a car? When do you need a car? And do you need a specific model? But through these questions, we capture the user's intent. And through that, and behind the hood of our app is a platform that carries our own AI dynamic scheduling function, fully integrated into the car telematics and fleet operations. And this enables us to meet more requests, to be more dependable, but also to be able to improve the service through knowing what is happening with the car. M has been live in Stockholm for around a year now. We have close to 100,000 registered users, and the 170,000 journeys that we have seen being rated, half of them are giving us 5 stars. We also see a huge potential in integrating with the hardware. And here we have already done some amazing first industry steps. So I think I'll stop here, and thank you all for listening.
Thank you so much, Bodil. And how exciting. So I'm actually learning to drive at the moment. I've never owned a car. So I think just in time, maybe when you come to the UK, I'll be ready. Very excited to have that coming through. I did want to dig into a couple of questions here as well. And I guess thinking about that relationship between Volvo Cars and Volvo Car Mobility, what does that support look like? How does that work?
So we are like a standalone unit operating with our own governance model. And I think this was really critical because the people we have in our company come from software service companies. They come from fintech, they come from game, music, and they are the one bringing a completely new notion to how to understand the customer and how we can provide a service that truly works.
Amazing. That's great. Thank you. And I guess, you know, as the CEO of Volvo Car Mobility as well, I'd really love to just ask you, what are you most proud of? And I guess thinking about that tech for good side as well, is there something that you're really passionate that you're happy to be able to talk to?
Yes, because both our users and our employees are here to provide a solution for the future. We know that the access industry is kind of the next step from the sharing economy, and this is truly sustainable. We know that we can exchange a large number of privately owned cars and provide space, give back space to the cities, and also reduce the carbon footprint through a more efficient use of assets. So it's a great passion in both the team and amongst our users.
Fabulous. Thank you so much, Bodil. What an amazing conversation. I'm really, really excited to hear about that. Thank you very much. So we are now continuing on with our next keynote. So we have an amazing speaker for you here today. So Nick Brackenbury, who is both the co-founder and CEO of Near Street. Do we have Nick on the line? Hi, Nick. How are you doing today?
Great, thanks. And yourself?
I'm very well, very well. Really exciting conversations, and I'm kind of scribbling away, taking amazing notes and stuff as well, and looking forward to your panel, to your discussion as well. So Nick, you are indeed the co-founder as well as the CEO at Near Street, and Near Street basically is a leading retail tech startup, which is all around getting people back onto the high street shops by showing real-time local inventory. You know, make sure that you've got everything that you need when you go to shop. You graduated in 2010, and you were one of Ogilvy's youngest account directors 3 years later before starting Near Street with an ex-colleague. So it was such a pleasure to have you joining. Thank you so much, and over to you for your keynote.
Yeah, my pleasure, and thank you very much for having me. So today I really want to talk about how the post-COVID world of retail actually has a lot more opportunity than most people think. But I really want to start with a story, and it's actually the story my co-founder told me about 5 years ago that led to me quitting my job and starting Near Street with him. And that's a very literal light bulb moment. He was sat at home about to have some friends over for dinner, and the light bulb in his living room goes. So, you know, he unscrews it, looks at what it says on the side, and taps it into Google. And Google gives him tons of places to order it online, but absolutely nothing nearby in North London. So he goes out, he wanders around the neighborhood for 45 minutes, and he eventually finds it in a local store 100 meters from his front door. And he gets home and he thinks, how is it possible that it is so much easier for me to get this light bulb from a warehouse hundreds of miles away than from a store just 100 meters from my front door? And really, we live in a world where products on the shelves of pretty much every shop in the world are invisible to the internet and these devices that we spend a disproportionate number of hours of our day with our heads buried in. So this is really what we solve. if you actually look at what this kind of journey looks like today for a customer, someone might search for something like, men's brogues in brown near me. And Google does a really bad job of surfacing that information. It gives you a bunch of places you can buy it online. It shows a map of where you can find it nearby. If you open up the map, it kind of guesses these are shoe shops, so maybe they might sell men's brogues in brown. It's a really, really bad experience. So when we think about what we want to do to improve that, so how do we actually get more people into shops by making this data, making the actual live inventory of shops visible to all these people who are searching nearby? And the journey that we're really looking to enable is super, super simple. It's really as simple as saying, just tap in a search term of something that you actually would want to look for online. So, it doesn't have to be something you're looking for locally, but, let's say you're looking for a gift for a friend and you tap it into Google, and Google, instead of just giving a whole bunch of online results, should actually be able to say, hey, this is also available somewhere nearby, and just give you some super simple tools to go and get it nearby. And that's all there should be to it. There should be no extra steps. There should be no asking and seeking out more information about where you can find it locally. So today, Google actually buys this technology from us to show live in-store inventory data in a whole bunch of different places in search. So when you tap in the name of a product, even if you're not looking for it locally, if it's available somewhere nearby, it can actually show up and say, hey, this is also available in your local shop. So there's a whole bunch of shops, from little bookstores in East London to kind of big health stores to beauty shops to fashion stores all over the UK using it. But there's probably something that that really stands out for everyone at the minute, and that's this chart. Everyone's probably seen something like this in the last few weeks, which is the percentage of our spend on shopping that is going to online. In the UK, this was sat at something like 20% pre-COVID-19. And then it suddenly skyrocketed to almost 35% under lockdown. It's dropping off a little bit now, but if you only read the headlines, you'd think there is absolutely nothing good in store for retail in the future, and COVID-19 has only accelerated the demise of the high street as we know it. What I really want to tell you about is a different side to this that most people don't actually see. So what's happened is we're suddenly searching for things online way more than we were before, and lockdown has only accelerated that. But in our data, we saw a very different chart. So there's a lot going on here. Two things you really want to look at. The first is that dark green line that sort of starts in the middle and then goes off a cliff. That's Google's retail footfall index. So we know that in the early days of the pandemic, there was a lockdown and everyone stopped going in store. The bar chart behind it is the volume of searches we were receiving for live in-store availability over the same period. And so if you look between the end of February and the end of April, you have a 7x jump in people looking for things nearby. This is huge. And once the lockdown was lifted, that only dropped off a little bit to the 5x, the volume that people were looking for things nearby compared to the pre-pandemic levels. And then if you go to the period when non-essential retail's reopened, we're hovering somewhere between 3 and 4x the volume of searches. So what's happened is people are looking for things nearby, but they're looking for them online. And that's something that they weren't doing anywhere near as much as before. And that poses some really interesting possibilities for what can happen in the future. What I want to wrap up with here is a few different conversations and pilots that we're going on now to really spark the imagination of what does this behavior mean when people suddenly get used to the fact that when you tap something into your phone, a search for something you want, you don't only see a bunch of online results. So the first is really thinking about Instagram. Now, you've probably all seen some form of shopping post in Instagram before, where you see a product and it's tagged in the post. Now, something like 130 million people each month tap on these posts at the minute, and they go to an online order form and they order the jacket. Imagine if Instagram also started to say, hey, this is also available 500 meters down the road from you or a kilometer down the road from your local store. What would that do for customer behavior when we're all walking around or sat on the bus scrolling through our Instagram feeds? Something that's really accelerated during the pandemic is Uber working with convenience stores. So we know at the minute Uber delivers something like 28 million meals each month from takeaways. What if that started to expand to retail? When you tapped a product into your phone, they also had access to all the items in your local stores, and they could deliver them to your door. What would that actually mean for how you interact with your local stores? And the last one is thinking about brands. What are some of the world's biggest brands, like Unilever or P&G or Nike had access and knowledge to what was where were their products stocked in every single store? And how could they do something more than just putting an ad on a bus or on an out-of-home campaign or putting something on a TV? on a TV commercial? What if they could actually say, you know what, anytime someone searches for one of my products, if it's in stock in a store near them, I want it to come up at the top of Google, or I want it to appear in an Instagram campaign, and I want to tell customers that my products are in fact stock nearby, because before that wasn't possible. And so that's what gets us really, really excited, is thinking, when you make this data universally available about what's in stores, that already opens up lots of opportunities. And what COVID-19 has done, and this is where we're really optimistic for the future, is it suddenly taught people that you can in fact use your phone to not only find things online, but actually discover things in the shops nearby. And if something comes out the back of this, that retailers and customers all discover this, then I think COVID-19 will actually have an incredibly transformational and disruptive effect on helping retailers innovate and really take a big step forward. So we're super positive and super optimistic about what the future for retail holds. And yeah, I'd really like to see where we are in 12 months' time once we're hopefully all allowed out and about a little bit more. So thank you very much for your time.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Nick. And how exciting, right? And to see that kind of link between moving from originally from the high street into the online and then combining again back into the high street. And I guess that merging of the two sides and the technologies to really enable us to kind of, combine the two. And I think get the best for both the consumers, for the people shopping, but also for local businesses. I think I'm
exactly
not
right.
alone by, thinking that I want to support my local shops and make sure that they're kind of getting great business and still on the high street is really active as well. I did want to dig into a few of those areas, if that's okay with you. So you talked obviously about these huge behavioral shifts which are happening as part of sort of the last 6 months and COVID as well. To what extent do you think that these are temporary and what's permanent? Where do we see the next sort of coming months going? How is that going to change retail?
So I think what's fascinating is that we expected there to be a big spike in people looking for things nearby. And that kind of 7x spike I've referred to, we didn't think it was going to be that big, but we kind of expected that. What's really surprised us is that it hasn't dropped off so quickly once non-essential retail has all reopened. And although we're buying a lot more online, we thought that would kind of go back to maybe 10 or 20% higher. So what we think is really interesting is we're going to sit on a multiple of what we were pre-pandemic of people looking for things nearby. And so whether it sticks at this 3 to 4x level that we're at now, where people are searching for things locally 3 to 4 times, I don't know. But if it's 2 times, or 2.5 times pre-pandemic, that's so exciting, because it's very sticky behavior when we've been doing it for 9 or 12 or who knows 18 months by that point. I really think that'll stick around, and that's very positive.
Absolutely. And I think, that changing behaviors which can kind of happen over these last months. And I think especially when we're talking about retail, it's very easy to be, I think, probably a little bit despondent, right? We hear a lot of negative news around the industry. But what is most exciting to you over the next 12 months? What do we see and what do we all have to be excited about?
I think a lot of retailers have been prompted to experiment and do things they'd never considered before, or they'd thought about but had never made the leap. So we have a whole bunch of retailers on our platform who overnight set up local same-day delivery services. Wow. So they're now delivering to their local customers faster than Amazon, which is crazy. These are kind of mom and pop stores often. And so that's just the start of this, when they start saying, actually, there's a whole bunch more that I can do that's really quite easy. And so when I look at the next 12 months, I'm thinking, wow, like, what else are these guys going to do now that they're starting to take a step into this space of saying, actually, I feel comfortable trying out these new things that are more technology based than perhaps they were comfortable doing before.
Yeah, it's a real sort of untethering of retail and all the old
exactly.
kind of assumptions as well. That's super exciting. So Nick, thank you so much. We're sadly coming to the end. I could talk for ages around this, but really exciting to have you join. Thank you. So we are now going on to, very much a pleasure. We're now going on to our next panel, which is really, really exciting. We have Krista Holloman, who is the founder and CEO of Divido, who's going to be talking to us about impact at the core of the business model. Krista, welcome. How are you doing today?
Good. Thank you. I'm doing very well. Thank you.
Amazing, amazing. And Christy, so you're the founder of FinTech Finishers, which is set up to raise awareness, inspire action, and introduce accountability for more diversity, inclusion, and equality in the FinTech industry, something which, as you can imagine, I'm very passionate about. You're the founder of retail finance API platform Divido. You launched Glassdoor.com in EMEA, which is subsequently acquired for a staggering $1.2 billion. That's a lot of zeros. And you're also the author of Amazon bestseller, the Social Media MBA series and How to Sell Online. That's quite a CV list, but it's such a pleasure to have you joining us. And over to you for your amazing panel.
Thank you. I should clarify, I didn't found Glassdoor.com. I was the first employee outside the US to set up the European sales and marketing operations. Just a nuanced difference there, but it's important to distinguish. So thank you all for dialing into this presentation, this panel discussion. We have 3 super exciting panelists. I'll give a short introduction to each of them so you know a bit more about them. We aim to have around 15 to 20 minutes of discussions to talk around the topic of impact for businesses. To kind of keep it interesting for you guys, I have sort of 3 different categories of questions. A couple of short sentence answers, a couple of yes/no questions and answers, and a couple of lengthier answers and questions as well. And I would like to encourage you guys to think about questions throughout this session. And between each segment of questions, I'd like to invite you to ask your questions so we can kind of keep it interactive in that sense. So from left to right, the first panelist is Agathe. She is the general partner at Norrsken VC. They are a €100 million early stage impact tech fund based in Sweden, but they have a European mandate. They fundamentally believe that impact companies have a shot at outperforming traditional companies because they have a unique USP when it comes to attracting talent, customers, and even capital. So that's super interesting. I look forward to hearing more about that. Then we have Mikkel from Impact Plus Impact at Danske Bank, where he is heading up that initiative. The initiative itself is created to help startups scale their businesses and the impact on society. And they have done a lot of research around best practices, and including 10 different myths that can get in the way of accelerating impact for startups and the wider ecosystem. So again, also very intrigued to hear more about that. Then we also have Kansu. She is a senior partner and head of fundraising at London-based Bethnal Green Ventures. They are a leading European early stage tech VC for good. Since 2012, they've invested in over 135 ventures across sustainability, health, equality, companies like Fairphone, Doctor, Commonplace. Not only do they invest in for-profit companies, but also impact companies. So for them, it's important to get the both sides of that equation right. So that's briefly about the esteemed panelists that we have. And as I mentioned, I have a battery of questions, but I'm very keen for you, the audience, to ask your questions. But I'll start first with the single sentence answers questions. So from left to right then, I got the first question with a 1 sentence answer. Remember, this is important, so we keep it brief and sharp and to the point. What is impact to you?
Wow, Christopher, you're really putting us on the spot here and limiting us to 1 sentence.
It's already more than 1 sentence.
Yeah, no, impact is an effect, which by definition means that it can be both positive or negative. So I'll leave it at that, my 1 sentence.
Brilliant. And Mikkel, what is impact for you?
I'll answer the question on impact startups. And for us, impact startups, that is that they have one or more of the global goals as part of the core business and are able to scale.
Okay. And Kansu, what is impact?
Hi, everyone. I'm going to go with our definition in terms of tech for good startups. And I guess I'll say, I'll pick the positive side then. An intentional positive effect on environment, people, and or society as a result of the business's direct activities.
Okay. And perhaps this is an obvious question, but why is impact important? Anyone can start with this one. But again, sentence, long answers.
Well, since I kicked off with a super short definition of impact, and as I said that, I mean, impact in essence is an effect. An effect can be both positive and negative. So it's super, super important to understand an impact of companies, or to be honest, any actions in our lives, because whatever we do does create impact. And since we can create both positive impact, it's so important to acknowledge it and move ourselves towards creating positive impact. And most importantly, to apply that to startups. All entrepreneurs are problem solvers. Let's solve the problems that truly have positive impact on people and planet.
Okay, a little bit longer than the sentence, but that's okay. We're still getting used to the format. Mikael, do you want to?
Yeah, if I can pick up on that and saying, well, if you have big problems or big challenges, then you also have huge potential. And I think that's really the case when we talk about the Sustainable Development Goals. We have until 2030 to find solutions to that. And this is where the startups come into play. They have the solution that would be to help us out.
Makes sense. And Kansu, why is, in your own words, or in the words of Bethel Green Ventures, why is impact an important point for you to look at?
Impact is important because our current default economics fail to sustain our planet and the most vulnerable in our societies. So we don't really have a choice.
Okay. And again, keeping the answers brief, what happens if companies are not able to articulate kind of their impact strategy or impact plan, or if they don't want to, or for some reason don't feel they can? What do you sort of have to say about those companies? Anyone can pick this one up.
I can pick up on that. And I guess a very short answer is basically the same thing that happened to the companies that really struggled to understand the importance of digital transformation in time. Like, you know, a lot of examples, but the one that pops to my mind right now is Blockbuster.
Interesting on that, actually. So in what sense was impact related to Blockbusters?
It's not. Demise? No, I'm talking I'm talking in terms of my analogy. The company. So what I'm saying is the same thing will happen to the companies that fail to recognize the importance of impact when they did not recognize the importance of digital transformation.
Got it. No, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Anyone else on the panel?
I guess what you also see here is this, that there's still kind of like a discussion about what impact actually comprises. For us, it would be natural that the startups, being impact startups, they would know about the impact because it's very much at the core. So this is not kind of like CSR initiatives, philanthropy, or other things. It's basically what they do business, invest their business in trying to solve some of these problems. Some don't articulate it that much, but still it's at the core that they are actually solving these societal challenges.
Makes sense.
I can just echo Mikael. It's exactly the same for us. If you're not articulating the impact, you're not articulating your business model or business plan. And if you're not articulating that, then you're probably going to struggle to either raise financing or in general move your company forward. So it's at the very core of the businesses that we back.
Okay, perfect. So I'm going to invite the audience to submit your questions through the chat interface. And whilst you get a chance to do that, I'll ask my last question on the short answer segment. Can any company retrospectively, can you apply an impact on them? I mean, for example, we've talked about Blockbusters. Should a traditional oil company try to come up with something to do with impact, or is this something that only young startups can do, sort of with a clean slate and sort of build an authentic mission and so on? What are you guys' thought on retrofitting impact to an incumbent company?
Yeah, if I should start out, basically, I think that actually, if you go back in time, you'll see a lot of the Danish big companies who actually had an impact founder at that time, because they were actually trying to solve some kind of a societal problem at the time. Doing it retrospectively, that would not necessarily be a good solution, as I see it. For us, impact is the ones that are actually doing this from the very beginning. Then retrospectively, you could talk about implementing CSR, philanthropic programs, ESG, and so on. But the fact about kind of like having impact at the core is something that is typically aligned from the beginning because it's so close to the business model.
Okay, I get it. Do you want to add anything?
I mean, I would probably disagree with that a little bit because in our experience, scouting for the best impact tech entrepreneurs out there is that the definition of impact is still a little bit blurry. And sometimes some entrepreneurs still don't realize that they are impact entrepreneurs. So it has happened to us where we would approach them and say, we would love to talk to you. We're so excited about what you're doing. And they turn around and saying, but you're an impact investor. Exactly, but your company is generating positive impact. Let's talk about it. We can help you to measure it. We can help you to articulate it. But under our definitions, you're 100% an impact company. So, should we sort of measure retrospectively for the sake of it? I don't know. But at the same time, I think at the moment we are overlooking certain segment of companies who haven't identified themselves as impact companies. And I think we should start to identify them as impact companies because as with anything, we need role models, we need inspiration. And if we can put more in the spotlight the success stories of existing impact tech companies, I think we can help the sector grow and accelerate.
Brilliant. Well, super. So that kind of concludes the first round of questions, which is supposed to be a kind of shorter sentence. And I always struggle a little bit with that. And we have one question from the audience. How do you get businesses long-term established to refocus? Is it one thing, I'm sort of reading here on the fly, how do you make impact at the core of the business if you're an established company? I guess it's sort of related to this topic we just covered, really. But can you authentically insert impact at the core of a business that's already in flight? Have you seen examples of this? Perhaps it could be another way of nuancing this question.
I can echo a little bit what Agatha said, and I definitely agree on that it's not necessary that startups do realize the impact that they have. So if they have the inherent thing that solving energy problems, reducing food waste or other things, of course, then you are able to tap into this agenda and basically enhance it even further. But you do need to have kind of like the prerequisites in order to build on that, I would say.
Makes sense.
Go ahead, Chansu.
No, thanks, Saga. I was going to say your earlier comments actually link up to what Mikael previously said, which is global problems being massive business opportunities, and therefore there being a lot of space for already established companies to actually take a good look at their initial goals when they first founded that company, and then going back to the roots, so to say, and taking into account the changing conjuncture and the shifting, the behavioral shifts that we're all going through as societies. And I guess in terms of answering the question that was put by the audience, what I want to say is, like, we really believe in being practical optimists at BGV, and our expertise is with early stage. So I'm personally slightly skeptical around retrofitting a full impact model on an already established business. But I do believe that all businesses can easily take a good look at the unintended consequences of their direct activities and then go from there. So there's definitely a good starting point.
Good, brilliant. So we have questions coming in, which is great. We'll revert back to more audience questions shortly, but we'll go on now to the second segment of the questions. I know we struggle with the one sentence answer. Now I'm going to push you to the limit. I'm going to ask for a yes or no answer. So very short answers. 3 quick questions, and anyone can start. Is impact more important than generating profit for shareholders? Yes or no? Anyone can start.
Well, I'm going to cheat and say equally.
Equally. Just playing it safe.
It has to go hand in hand.
Okay. I got that. I get that. Do you have
Same
any?
here. It's like asking is sky red or green. So I think there's a mistake in the premise of the question. Sorry.
So I'm just trying to create a little bit of friction here and
no, it's good. It's good.
Force a conversation. Here's another yes or no question then. 20 or 50 years ago, companies did not talk about impact. It wasn't something, well, some founders clearly did, Mikkel just mentioned, but it wasn't as widespread as it is today. Do you think the way we talk about impact today will be replaced by a different buzzword in 10 years or 20 years? Yes or no?
Yes, but a lot of the challenges lying behind will still be the same, so the opportunity space will still exist. It might be called something else.
Yeah. Any other answers to that?
Yeah, I'm going to echo on that and say sometimes these buzzwords actually open up the discussion to wider groups. So they might do some harm, but they definitely do some good in terms of making these issues more mainstream.
Agatha, do you want to add anything to that, or?
I'm still thinking. No, I'd say it's one of those, same content, different wrapping. The content won't disappear, but the wrapping may change.
Okay, so my last yes or no question before we take another audience question is, again, yes or no. Is Nordic companies better at impact than non-Nordic companies? Obviously, keeping in mind the company we keep today and the audience of this session, and there's a lot of Nordic companies online. Yes or no? Nordic companies better than others?
I'm going to assume I'm the only non-Nordic on the call, so I'm going to say no.
I can tell you, we tried to, as one of these myths, to see if the Nordics were a better kind of ecosystem on impact compared to others. And our conclusion is that per capita, the Nordics are really good, but in absolute terms, London, other places have a more vibrant ecosystem.
Okay.
Yeah, I would also say no. I don't want to put us ahead of anyone else, and I think fantastic impact companies and entrepreneurs can be found anywhere.
Sounds good. Well, thank you for the quick yes and no answers. We have another question from the audience before it's actually time for us to wrap up. So maybe from each of you, you can choose how long you want to answer these questions. I will not put any limitations on this. Which areas are the most exciting for you at the moment with regards to impact investments? Who wants to start? Which area is the most exciting from an investment perspective?
I can go first. And again, we tend to invest at the very, very early stage. So our three main impact themes are quite wide. And I'm going to explain that a little bit. So we tend to invest in a better society, a sustainable planet, and healthier lives. And under that, if we wanted to break it down to, more tech subsets, so to say, we would be looking at a lot of digital health and sustainability solutions. And under that, we will be looking at both software and hardware, software as a service. Usually, we will be very excited about anything that's business to business or business to government sort of things, as much as we're excited about consumer products. And we've tended to invest a lot in the past in educational technologies as well, which we think is an area that's with the ongoing disruption we're all facing right now, which is really exciting, and really we're very interested to hear more and more solutions that are widening the digital space and making education accessible for people from all walks of life.
Brilliant, very clear. If you guys are really short with the answers, we can definitely go through the rest. I got there, Mike, Mikkel, do you want to add anything?
Well, I can add that if when we look at the startup ecosystem in the Nordics, then we can see that the majority of the startups, they are focusing on the global goal called on health and well-being, so providing solutions to that, and also on responsible consumption. So that would be waste minimization, food waste, recycling, circular economy, and so on. So that is at least where we see the biggest pools of impact startups.
Okay, I got that. Any quick additional points on focuses that you have?
No,
We
I'd
have
say
to wrap up shortly.
are equally exciting and equally important. But if I look at kind of our pipeline snapshot, then we review over 1,000 companies annually, and if we kind of analyze that, then at the moment half of them fall within the climate section, which is contribute somehow to CO2 emission savings. So that's where we see the biggest opportunity. But I wouldn't say that one is more exciting than another, because all of these issues and challenges are critical and extremely important.
Brilliant. Guys, we didn't have much time. We covered a lot of ground. Thank you very much for taking time to spend the afternoon with us. I will now hand it back over to our hosts to proceed the afternoons of events.
Thanks all.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you so much, Krista. What an amazing conversation, and obviously delighted to see a bit of flag flying there for the UK as social impact as well. So we're going to take a little bit of a break now, so give you an idea as far as what's coming up next. So we've got an amazing panel discussion. I'm a little bit biased on this one, but talking about attracting capital and backing ideas, followed by a session from Stephen Collins from King. So very, very exciting there to see that game side, to talk about from idea to global, so building a unicorn. And off to the break, but be back with you soon.
The Swedish Spirit Summit is about bringing the two business communities of Sweden and the UK together.
So we were discussing a lot around the evolution of leadership, what it means to be a great leader, and how you can deliver great bottom line and great profit, as well as really maintaining that trust and building that vision and that purpose for every member of your organization.
So coming together today with like-minded people provides a great platform to continue that discussion.
When you're entering a new market, it's important that you can focus your time on the things that you're best at, that bring real value to your new business. Goodwill gives you time to do that by taking care of all the non-core business activities and making sure you're compliant with UK regulations.
Our team at Goodwill help businesses from around the world enter the UK market, and here are our top 5 tips for setting up in the UK. Jumping in too quickly or with the wrong business structure can become an expensive mistake. Everything takes longer than you think, so be prepared and don't give up too soon. Have agreements in place to protect you in case things go wrong. The best retail space, talent and ideas for services and products can be snapped up before you know it. Meet with people who understand the UK, both from a business perspective and a cultural one. Goodwill have extensive experience helping businesses set up in the UK and is a great place to start.
Welcome back, everyone, and very much hope you've enjoyed the session so far. We've got some more exciting panels and discussions obviously coming up for you. First of all, obviously one which I'm going to be moderating, talking about attracting capital and backing ideas. So that's a fantastic panel discussion we've got lined up for you. And then we've got Stephen Collins from the amazing King, who's going to be talking about from idea to global. So building a unicorn, and they're definitely the people to talk to that as well. So at this point, can I bring in my panel, please? And we have our amazing panel. Hello, everyone. How are you doing today?
Hi there, very good.
Hi. Amazing, amazing. Thank you all for joining today. So this is super exciting, and obviously I get to do a little bit more talking here and get some really amazing ideas from you as well. So you are here today to talk to me about attracting capital and backing ideas. Now this is really, really exciting. The journey from passion to idea into successful venture often depends on successful partnerships, especially with that initial and in some cases long-term investors as well. So we're going to be looking at what investors look for and what are the kind of things that, you know, startups as founders that we can think about. And to join me obviously on my amazing panel today, I have some really amazing speakers. I'm very grateful for you all joining today. Kicking off there with Deepka Rana, who's a venture capital investor at Northzone. Hello, Deepka. So Deepka is an early stage VC at Northzone, and she spends her time covering the UK and German markets. She previously focused on consumer startups at Hardcore Capital, and you started, I think, your career at Bank of America Merrill Lynch, who I know very well from my previous company that I was running as well, in their investment banking division, where you advise tech clients in the tech and media sector. Welcome, Deepka. We next have Annette Wilson there at the top of my screen. Annette, lovely to have you joining. Thank you so much. Who's the chair of Antler, chair of Europe for Antler. Annette is a global leader and chair of Europe for Antler, a global early stage VC firm. Prior to being at Antler, she was actually founding CFO and managing director at Palamon Capital Partners, and additionally held a number of senior roles across the investment industry, including serving on the board of the BVCA, so that's the British Venture Capital Association. Welcome, Annette. Thank you for joining. And then going on to, we have Sophia. So Sophia Dolfer is an investor at Index Ventures. I'm sure many of you have heard of them. Sophia joined Index in April 2018. She spends her time in the Nordics and the Netherlands and focuses on investments in consumer internet and marketplace businesses across all stages. And then prior to joining Index, she was an investor at EQT Ventures in Stockholm. Welcome, Sophia. And then our final two, but definitely not least, Carlo Biggio, who is the VP at Excel. Carlo, welcome. Very nice to have you joining there. Carlo is part of the team at Excel, a global venture capital firm, partner to exceptional teams everywhere in the world. He spends most of his time working in the Nordics and Baltics with a special interest in cloud, fintech, and security businesses. Welcome, Carlo. Thank you very much for joining us today. And then last but not least, by any means, we have Teemu Mattila, who's a VC investor at DN Capital. Hello, Teemu. Lovely to have you joining us today. So Teemu is a VC investor at DN Capital, which is a London and San Francisco-based VC fund where he focuses on SaaS and B2B fintech. So leading DN's Nordic coverage on the boards of GetAccept, LeapWork, Cubin, Happio, and you have a special interest, I believe, in growth mindset and neuroscience around training as well. So super, super excited to have you all joining. Thank you very much. Now that we've, I guess, got the intros down, we get into the juicy bits, right? We get into the questions itself. And perhaps I think, Sophia, perhaps if I can go to you to kick us off. For anyone new to investment, what would you say? What would your sort of introduction to them be? And specifically, you know, what are the different types of investment? What should founders think about, you know, if they are considering to take investment?
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, thank you for having me. And as for the types of investments, I'd bucket it into three different categories. So first one being just traditional debt type of financing. And then the second two falling into the venture bucket, where you have both venture debt on the one hand and you have venture capital on the other hand. And Index, and I think some of my peers here around the table, focus on the venture capital bucket of those two. But I'll quickly touch on the difference and what you might want to think about as you explore various investment opportunities. So venture debt, you can think about being an up to perhaps 3-year term loan or a series of loans where you have warrants for company stock. So the difference between venture debt versus venture capital is that it's less costly as a founder to seek this type of investment.
and you're not right away giving up equity when structured in a certain way. And as for the risk appetite, it might be that there's a little more flexibility as for the type of journey that investors would expect you to have going forward. When thinking about venture capital, it tends to be that investors are looking for fast growth, potential category leadership over time, where profitability might not be a near-term perspective, but it's something that you seek once you've really obtained that category leadership. And Index falls within the venture capital bucket. And within that, there are also various types of funds that either focus on the earlier stage, so if a company has just recently been founded, to mid-stage if a company is a few years down the line, to later stage when you're potentially nearing an exit. And funds within venture capital that invest in these different stages will look for different types of outcomes depending on the fund size of that investor. I can give the case of Index. So we're a venture capital firm that invests from both an early stage venture fund and a growth stage fund. We have a $1 billion growth fund at the moment and a roughly $600 million venture fund. And what we look for when we invest is the potential for a company to eventually return these funds for us. And the way that the economics of venture capital works is that it's really a power law in that you make many investments and it might not be that all of the investments are successful because it's high risk early on, but assuming investors do their job right and assuming that you've invested in numerous companies within that fund, the hope is that one or at least a few companies will have meaningful enough outcomes to be able to return those funds for investors and also for their LPs who are investors in the fund. So when thinking about what type of investment you'd like, I'd really recommend trying to think about what's the goal with this business, what kind of scale are you hoping to achieve, how early on in your journey are you, and really trying to match those objectives with the type of investor that you contact, because everyone will be expecting different types of outcomes. But in the broad sense, those are the different ways that I'd categorize it.
That's super insightful. Thank you, Sophia. And I think that point around, really thinking carefully about, what kinds of investment do you want to take? Is it the right time for your business? And I guess, with all of you on the panel, I'm sure you have lots of discussions with companies around, is this the right time to do that? What are you going to use it for? How is it going to help you and impact your business? And I guess thinking about, that process of going through raising investment and, is now the right time? It might be a follow-on investment. Teemu, I wonder if I could go to you for a little bit, actually. So we know that this is how I guess this is the ideal landscape. A company has thought, okay, yes, it's the right time. I think I figured out how what kind of investment I need to raise. But thinking about today, so raising investment today itself, has the investor landscape changed at all in the last 6 months? Are things more difficult? Are they easier? Can companies still raise in the same way, or are the principles still the same as before?
Thanks a lot. I appreciate the question. I think, in a nutshell, if I think of it like, is there any thresholds or any metrics or any certain milestones that you would need to achieve before speaking with investors? Like from my standpoint, like in a nutshell, there isn't. Like for example, we just went through an investment process into actually a Swedish company that wasn't fundraising, and they didn't have a pitch deck. So I would love to meet with entrepreneurs if we feel that there's a great fit to our investment strategy, and we feel that we could be potentially the best or the most value-adding investor for that specific company. But more than from the, let's say, from the VC landscape perspective, I think the competition in general has increased quite drastically in the past few years. The U.S. funds coming here and a lot of European funds also raising new funds. So there's quite a lot of dry powder out there, and I think that has like two key implications in the VC landscape. Is that we cannot, as an investor, we just cannot anymore rely on the inbound deal flow and just on the networks for sourcing deals. But I believe that we need to be more proactive and go after the most exciting opportunities more proactively. And secondly, I also think that we as an investor, we need to evolve our thinking in relation to risk perception, like between these seed, Series A, Series B category, or these stage categories, in order to make those decisions, investment decisions in between these stages. Because I mean, in those timelines, the companies and the industries are still fundamentally the same. So from my standpoint, to wrap, I think the best investors are going after proactively these most exciting opportunities, and they're able to make those investment decisions already before that Series A or before that Series B, rather than being just in a quite crowded fundraising process, which hopefully is also more like effective and like better way to the entrepreneurs to structure a fundraising process.
And I think your point around, going hunting, and that's what you call it, isn't it? You're unicorn hunting. You're looking for these high potential companies who are doing really exciting things with their technologies. And also, I guess, within the current landscape, really thinking about, are you finding the best companies? Are you only relying on your existing networks, or actually looking for those little hidden gems and looking for those underrepresented, underserved founders and that side of things as well? And I guess building on that slightly, maybe, Deepka, if I can go over to you. So obviously the topic for today is tech for, right? We're talking about impact companies where they are being driven by their mission. They're being driven by, wanting to change the world, wanting to do something which is different, and obviously, change the world around them. It's not just around profits necessarily. But I'd love to think, and you're obviously an experienced investor here, thinking about making investments. Are they different? What advice would you give to a tech for good founder around raising investment? Do they need to approach this any differently, or actually are the fundamentals the same regardless of where you're going around what businesses need to put forward and how a VC will need to sort of evaluate you as a company?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So I can speak to it really from a venture capital or a venture investor perspective. But there's also, as Sophia alluded to earlier, like there's other sources of capital. But maybe just zooming in on the VC side, I think unless they state otherwise, most funds from a venture perspective will be looking for fast growth and a commercial model that can scale into a large business. And from that perspective, I think most venture funds will not use really a different lens to assess a tech impact business versus just a standard tech business, to be completely transparent. And I think ultimately my advice for founders when approaching this or when approaching VC investors, or maybe even other types of financial investors, is to really do the homework on the investor that you're talking to and really understanding their criteria. I think, for example, some of them might have a specific mandate to invest in tech for good companies, and that might be their priority, or they might just be a more standard financial investor who's more focused on the scale and the business model. Ultimately, all investors will be looking for a return, but depending on the type of capital and the type of investor, those return expectations are going to be different. So really understanding that is really important as a founder. When you're first of all assessing who should I pitch to in the first place, and then taking those nuances and sort of adapting your pitch towards it. So for some people, you might be emphasizing more things about the mission, the team, and then for other investors, actually the emphasis is really going to be on the size of outcome, how fast can you get to that point, and those types of milestones. So making sure as a founder that you're really well prepped on who is on the other side of the table and who is most suitable for your business, depending on what you're trying to achieve. I think that is really the critical element when it comes to thinking about pitching.
And I think this really ties in well with, I think, the panel we had a little bit earlier as well, where there was that sort of question asked around, what is more important, mission or profits, or mission or revenue? And I think, absolutely, I think the two go hand in hand. And certainly, from my experience, having run a small good company for a social mission company, I think for a lot of founders to see the driving of revenues as being a liberator, the more revenues you can generate, that more it allows you to kind of do with your mission, and success can kind of grow from there. And I guess sort of building on that idea of, let's say you've got this idea, you've really thought carefully about, okay, this is the right type of investment. You want to now get spotted, right? You want to make those relationships, and going, I think, to Temu's point, how do you get spotted by those VCs? And perhaps if I can go on to you, Carlo. So Carlo, what should founders look for in their investor? Because it's a two-way relationship, right? It's not just about what the VC wants, it's about what the company wants as well, and what the founder wants. Are there any critical questions that either VCs will ask, or actually you think that founders should always ask around making sure that they get that fit right, and the types of characteristics that they might be looking for?
Sure. So it is so-called marriage, right? So it's really a long-term relationship. So I think it's very important for founders to ask two questions. Number one is, am I looking for a long-term partner? And if yes, you want to make sure your long-term partner has either a deep expertise in the topic that you're tackling. For example, it has a lot of investments in an area that you're tackling, or the investment team has a background that tried to build something that you're building at the moment, or maybe there's a successful former CEO that is now one of the investors, as well as the right network also to help my idea scale. So I think it's very important that you do your own work, and when you do get in touch and when you do get to talk to people, you actually understand where those people can, the so-called add value, actually add something on top of obviously the capital that invest in the business. And I also think it's important, again, from a founder perspective, that to ask the right question in terms of, is this the right venture capital given my stage? Because there are many businesses that are great businesses that they don't really realize that taking on venture capital, as Sophia laid out, has implications. So we usually look for businesses that are growing fast. We usually look for businesses that want to become very, very big in a very short period of time. And so it's quite important, to have expectations aligned. So obviously, if you are seeking for capital for potentially pursuing an exit opportunity for you and the team in the next 2 to 3 years, that's great. But for certain investors, it's quite difficult to back those type of businesses. So I would say in general, it's also important to manage expectation with respect to the parties you're bringing on board, because the one of the investment might be different from yours. So that's more on the entrepreneur side. So really asking the question, is the right partner, and do we have aligned expectations? And then in terms of getting spotted, I really think these days it's getting easier to get spotted for a few reasons. Number one, with remote working, obviously we all travel less. It's always important to be on the ground and build those relationships. But I think if you want to get connected to people, you can do this much easier than a few years back. And I would say my first tip is really, and these are really practical tips that I thought about. First of all, your company, make sure it's on LinkedIn. Even if you're 1-2 employees, make sure it's on LinkedIn. Make sure you have a very easy website where you say what you do. 2-liners is fine. And then if you can, also just start a blog, a newsletter, a Medium page, whatever, with your thoughts on the space you're tackling, even before you start this business. So this way you can see what kind of inbound you get. So do you have investors looking at your page? Do you have customers looking at your page? So that's already a bit of a validation whether the idea is a good idea. And then on top of that, most of us follow different themes and areas of focus. So obviously, to Temu's point, we are hunters. So, besides those companies that are raising money and they might come to us, we look for interesting areas we want to spend time on. And obviously, if I'm interested in looking at, DevOps, for example, I'll be looking at all the companies in Europe that do DevOps. And obviously, if you have your, I would say your LinkedIn or even a website, I might find you and then I'll get in touch. So there's no need to get in touch really. And then the third tip is honestly just keep reaching out coldly to the firms though that are within your space in terms of industry and might be an interesting fit in terms of a stage of the business. So those will be my tip in getting spotted. I think where the world is heading is going to make it easier also for entrepreneurs coming from everywhere in the world to get attention from venture capital.
Yeah, and I think I think your point around, you know, making sure that you've got a good website, good information, that you're blogging, it's so critical, really, isn't it? And I think especially as founders, it's very easy, and especially, I guess, against mission-led companies, it's very easy to just get so caught up in building your company, you forget that no one else knows the story. So I think creating that sort of narrative, bringing people along for the ride, and getting people, I guess, hearing about you in some cases before you might meet, that's such a sort of important part of, I guess, building your reputation and making sure that you kind of get onto, obviously, the right tables and in front of the right people as well. That's super, super helpful. Thank you for that. Annette, I want to go to you. Now, we have this, obviously, this situation where, okay, let's say this company has gone through, they've managed to get funding. I think going to Carlo's point there as well, you know, this is a relationship, it's a two-way relationship. And this is a long-term relationship potentially, right? Because you might be talking to companies who have taken a round of investment, but that company might then take a follow-on round from the investor. They might sort of stay together for a number of years. So, you know, if you've picked that right person, you know, this is almost like a marriage, I guess, isn't it? You know, what are these people sort of doing together? And from the startup perspective, I'd love to get your thoughts as someone who's obviously sat on, you know, number of boards. You sit on a board right now. What are the best ways for startups to manage those relationships? You know, what should they do? What does a good founder-investor relationship look like? How should they work together? And what are the kind of tips that you would recommend to any company doing that kind of activity?
Well, I think you've absolutely summarized it. It is a long-term relationship. And with all relationships, they do evolve. So I think, you know, when you've just managed to raise money, it's a bit like a marriage, you know, there's all the excitement and you've done a deal. But now, as you have the investor on board, it's really deepening the relationship. And I think the challenge, particularly if you've got a, you know, quite a wide cap table, is different investors will bring different things. So the first thing is to really partner with your investors and really get to know them, you know, sort of what makes them tick, and then also seeing what they can contribute. I think Carlo also mentioned earlier, you know, they bring to the table more than just the money. You know, there's a lot of expertise. A lot of them are really well connected. They can perhaps introduce you to some expertise, even if they don't have the in-depth expertise themselves. And I think it's really starting to build a trust with your investors, because, and with the trust, one of the key things I think really important is transparency. So be open with your investors. Your investors are not always wanting to hear that you know, you're going on for bigger and better things. Obviously, if you are successful, it's great. But we all know that when you invest, particularly in early stage businesses, it doesn't always go in a straight line or exactly as we expected it to go. So sometimes it's worthwhile just swapping notes with them and saying, look, I'm going through a tough time, or, you know, one aspect is taking longer than what we had thought. And if your investors really know what the issues are, very often they come up and, you know, they give some thought to it, and they can connect you with something or somebody who you never thought they had connections. So I think openness is really important. And, you know, I've seen, you know, some relationships get off to a good start, and it really builds for a really trusting long-term relationship. And where businesses who've had a tough time get back again, just because there's this huge trust. And obviously, you know, some people are really lucky and their businesses don't go through tough times, which is then, you know, then obviously I think that relationship work you do is also not wasted.
Yeah.
But those would be my two main things.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that point around, you know, like any good relationship, there are good times and bad times. And, you know, when we're talking about startups, we're talking about industries which are so volatile, you know, companies, you know, it's not an easy thing to kind of build a startup to success. But I think your point around building trust with your investor, because that's really the thing, really, isn't it? Because you're not just taking money from these people, you are taking their connections, you're taking their advice, their experience, and counting on the fact that they have probably seen, you know, certainly dozens, if not hundreds or thousands of companies go through similar types of things before, and using that expertise to make sure that, you know, you're creating your business up for the best chances of success as well. Thank you so much, panel. That was really, really interesting. We're getting, I think, just down to our last couple of minutes as well. So I did want to just do a little bit of a wrap-up question as well. Obviously, we can never kind of pick all of your brains. I wish we could download you and just kind of help all of the startups kind of see what, you know, all the amazing advice that you have. But we're not able to do that as yet. However, if you were to do a wrap-up in sort of 30 seconds on what would be your tip? So whether any of the topics that we've sort of discussed in today's panel around whether it's thinking about raising investment, actually going through the process of raising investment and forming that relationship or managing them afterwards, you know, what would you give to a startup as good advice to get them on their way? And perhaps if we go in the reverse order that we started with, so Annette, if I can maybe kick off with you.
I think agility is one of the key things, being open-minded and being able to think on your feet and manage the process. I would think that's probably the most important for me to survive.
Thank you very much, Annette. Really, really great advice. Carlo next.
And for me, given the amount of conversations these days VCs have with companies, I would encourage you every time I have a conversation with a VC of any type, shape, and form, always ask questions around, you know, seeing that they're seen as the portfolio, and really ask the questions that you like them to answer. So you can just get, you know, from each conversation, get a lot of learnings that hopefully you can apply to your business.
Yeah, I think asking questions is always one of my favorite things. And I come from the research industry, and I figure if you're not asking questions, you're not doing your job. So I think really, really valuable advice there. Deepka. Oh, I think we might have lost your sound there.
Just making sure you follow up on everything, whether it's a question, whether it's something else you need to show the investor, or a question they ask, you don't have the answer to hand. Just making sure you stay in the loop and you follow up.
Super, super important, Deepka. And I think this is that thing really, isn't it, where, you know, this is your opportunity to show the investors that you are professional, that you're set up, that you're diligent, that they can work with you on those sort of longer term programs and do so with confidence as well. So super, super, helpful advice there as well. Teemu.
I think the topic of investor selection is a really intriguing and a really, really big decision for any company. So before signing the term sheet, just have those founder references or those CEO references, speak with the people that the investors are working with, in order just to validate that they're actually helping the companies and contributing positively to this journey. So yeah, I think that's a key tip from my side.
Super, super helpful. And yeah, I think, you know, keeping an eye on that as you kind of go along and making sure that you're kind of aware of what's happening. I think that's such an important thing for any company to kind of think about. And wrapping up where we started off, Sophia, over to you for our last comment.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd highlight the importance of storytelling. I think as you're building a business, there's so much uncertainty, and there's so many people that you need to bring on board as part of that journey. Everything from investors to potential hires that will want to join you as part of this journey. So having a really clear view for what it is that you're embarking on and what the vision is, and having a clear story, I think will really help in being able to attract others to really be part of this journey together with you.
Absolutely, Sophia. And that point around sort of, you know, inspiring people around your products. And the hope is obviously with startups, we're talking about the most exciting companies who are out there. So I think absolutely making sure that you can tell your story. That's a fantastic tip. Thank you so much, panel. I could obviously talk for ages more with all of you, but really, really appreciate you joining. I'm sure there'll be lots of questions. So, you know, I'm guessing probably all of you are on Twitter or those types of social media platforms. So if people have sort of comments and stuff, I'm sure they would welcome stuff as well. But thank you so much for joining, and a pleasure to have you here today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for that, folks. And yeah, we're kicking off our next section now. Obviously, really, really great conversation there around finance. And we're going to Stephen Collins, who definitely knows a thing or two around sort of raising finance. So Chief Technology Officer at the amazing King. I'm a big gamer, Stephen, so it's really exciting to have you joining us today. So Stephen leads the digital architecture strategy, driving technology advances at King. You have 35 years in the industry. story around leadership, technology, information in games, computer graphics, mobile applications, and you're also a founder yourself. So you've seen both sides of the fence on that side, co-founder of Havoc Inc. as well as Swerve New Media as well. Pleasure to have you joining, Stephen. How are you today?
No, pleasure to be here. Hi, Molly. It's great to be here. Very good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. So I'm going to hand over to you now for your keynote, and then we're going to have a little bit of a chat after.
Sounds great. Thanks, Molly. And hi, everybody. Thanks for inviting me. Particularly thanks to the Swedish Chamber of Commerce. I really appreciate the opportunity to chat to you guys. So I'm Steve. I'm CTO of King. And I guess maybe a lot of you may have heard of King and maybe some of you haven't heard of King. So just a brief history of King as a company. It was founded in 2003. Some of the founders are still with us. We had our first major success with Candy Crush Saga. It's a game probably I think people are very familiar with. It was launched in 2012. It went on to be one of the most successful mobile titles of all time, which we're really proud of, and it still is a huge success. We went public in 2014. And then joined Activision Blizzard in 2016 following an acquisition. And so now we're part of the Activision Blizzard King family. We've got over 2,000 employees, so we're a relatively large company, and most of those are involved directly in game development. Those employees are located all around the world, but principally we're in Sweden, in Stockholm, and in Barcelona and London. So that's just a little bit about King. We're very well known for Candy Crush, obviously, but we've a huge history of developing lots of different types of games across loads of different platforms. So we've over 200 titles in our history. We still run many of those titles today. They're live and lots of users interacting with those games. The more famous ones, I guess, as I mentioned, was Candy Crush. We also have other large titles, games that are super successful in their own right, like Pet Rescue, Farm Heroes, and Bubble Witch. And just some interesting fun stats and figures. Last quarter, actually, Q2 of 2020, was our biggest quarter ever as a company. We had over 270 million monthly active users sort of playing our games, across all the titles, which was just an amazing achievement for the company, I think. And just a sort of a fun stat, which sort of means nothing, but gives you a sense for the amount of activity that happens in our games. Our games are puzzle games that are played by swiping on the screen, and we've had over 33 trillion swipes since the launch of Candy Crush, which is just an awesome number. And you can imagine behind running games at this scale is quite a lot of technology that we have to keep running to make sure that these experiences are seamless for our players and to make sure that the games are always on and always available. I won't talk about technology today, but just another sort of milestone we hit late last year was our 5,000th level in Candy Crush. You can imagine the amount of energy that goes into creating these levels. Each level is itself its own puzzle, and we have to have designers crafting these levels to create a great experience for our players. Since then, we've gone on and we've created another 2,500 levels, so we're probably well on the way now to 10,000, but hopefully that'll happen soon. So I just wanted to give you some background on what I thought were some of the contributing factors to King's success, not least of which, of course, is the team and the innovation happening inside of King as a company, but just maybe some of the external factors that I think helped grow the company. We happened at the same time as the smartphone. King was founded in 2003 before the iPhone and first Android devices were launched, but 2007, 2008 represented the pivotal point in the game industry for mobile games. And now King's games are available across all platforms. We pride ourselves in supporting all platforms, from the most recent mobile hardware all the way down to older hardware, just to make sure that the experience for all our players is consistent, wherever they want to play our games. But that gave us a reach, gave us a market that we could launch our games into. Free-to-play was a big part of the DNA of King as well. All our games are 100% free-to-play all the way through. Some percentage of our players do choose to pay, and that's generally for things like to speed up certain levels, to skip levels, or to get extra lives so they can continue to engage with the game. And that's how we make our revenue, is through the in-app purchasing. And that new model, that new way of doing business as a game developer, I think was pivotal in King's success. And then probably another factor was an innovation that King brought to the mobile game space. These are puzzle games, essentially, and each level represents an individual puzzle. But King innovated by essentially connecting those levels into a narrative and to allow players to really get a sense of progression they're sort of playing inside a world that reacts to them and allows them to really feel like they're achieving in the game. And that saga map is core to that. And the saga map itself is something that we see in most of our games now, and it's one of the sort of hallmarks of a King game and something that our players really, really enjoy. And then maybe a final aspect is games industry went through a transition over a decade ago, and King was really part of that, which was moving away from a more retail-oriented delivery of a single sort of version of the game to an always-on game, a service, an entertainment space that our players come to and expect to be entertained. And that's exactly what our King games provide. So Candy is a game, it's a puzzle game, but it's also a destination where players come together, where we can layer on a sort of a meta experience inside the game. We can sort of layer on tournaments and layer on seasons and just activities that constantly keep it fresh and give players a reason to come back and to interact and play the game. So those are some of the contributing factors. Of course, this is a super interesting market, and a market that's changed so much since I started. In the intro, it says I was in the industry for 35 years. That's because I started developing games when I was a kid. So I think that's maybe a bit of a stretch. I'm not quite that old. But back then, when I was developing games, a hit game maybe had 5,000 installs or 5,000 downloads or 5,000 purchases. Now it's in millions, if not billions. The game industry itself is expected to be worth over $75 billion or $77 billion by the end of this year. And it's growing about 12 to 15% year on year. So it's still a growth space and lots of space for us to continue to innovate inside of. King, just in the theme of tech for good as well, sort of important maybe to talk about some of our activities in the wider community. King prides itself on its interactions with our community. Our players really consider the games that we provide as a safe space to come together. And we collaborated with the WHO and other game developers earlier this year when we had the height of the sort of COVID situation. And we were using the games as a way to reach players and a way to distribute messages about safety and about hygiene and about social distancing. And we contributed to that. And obviously our reach and being able to connect to this huge audience is really important to be able to leverage that for positive reasons as well. I think ultimately we were able to also provide a safe space for our players during a particular week where we made our games completely unlimited access. So free lives essentially for the entire week. And our players just responded so well to that. The community, everyone was experiencing COVID in a different situation or a different experience. So this allowed people just to forget about what was going on in the world, around the world for a period of time, and just sort of immerse themselves in the game and have fun and interact with the community. And we at King feel so passionately about that, and it was really awesome to see the types of responses we got from our players. We continue to innovate, and our latest announced title is Crash on the Run, which is using the Crash Bandicoot IP, part of our Activision sort of history. And Crash is a famous character from console gaming times, so we're really super excited to be bringing that to the mobile game space, and it's something you'll hopefully see in the not too distant future. Anybody who's interested in getting an early preview, sign up for our beta program, just visit king.com. We'd be very happy to have you and to give you early access. So that's all about King.
That's super exciting. Thank you very much, Steve. And what a great way to kind of get some early exposure, right, into your beta platform. That sounds very exciting. I do want to pick your brain a little before we kind of wrap up. We know that games are often at the cutting edge as far as innovation and really kind of thinking about what technology can do and how people can kind of make use of that. Do you see AI playing a role here? What do you think that the impact of AI will be in games, and how they're created, how they're put together, how they're used by people?
That's a great question. And AI has a huge impact across many parts of how we would develop games and how we sort of distribute and make the games live for our players. Let me think. Probably the most impactful thing is when we create a level. So I've mentioned those 7,600 levels we have in Candy. Each one has to be handcrafted. And so one way that we can automate some of that process and at least get a better understanding of how good that level design is, we use bots. So we have AI trained bots that essentially play our levels over and over and over and over again with a view to trying to give us a sense for, is this a very difficult level? Is it an easy level? Are there sort of cheats that you can employ to sort of skip through the level in a quick way? And so that's really important for us, and we use AI very heavily there. We also use AI for testing our games. Anybody who's developed a product knows how important it is to test all aspects of the product. And when you've got say a web product with lots of UI, you have to explore all aspects of the UI, press every button, expose every form. Games are essentially like a much more complex version of that, where there's a combinatorial explosion of things you can do.
Yeah.
So we rely heavily on AI bots again to explore our games and to test the limits of the games.
That's so amazing. I have these visions of these AI bots who are sort of using all of these cheat codes and running through your games. That's very exciting. And thinking about, I guess, you know, and we've got you on the line here, maybe a few sneaky peeks, you know, what's going to be the next big thing in games? What's really exciting at the moment?
Oh man, I mean, I'm so passionate about games because I've been in the industry for so long and I haven't lost my excitement for it, but I tend to geek out on certain parts. So sort of maybe putting aside my king hat for a second, I've always loved graphics, and I've seen some amazing innovation in ray tracing and some of the next generation of hardware coming out from the GPU manufacturers, which is just awesome. So I geek out on that. I think from our perspective, we see games, and we're seeing increasingly our engagement with our community as a social experience. And you have your social networks, but I think games provide this really interesting space for people to come together with a common cause in a very, very safe environment where you're really not worried about having different types of messaging being blasted at you. So we love seeing those social dynamics emerge from the games. And I'd hope to see a lot more of that in time. And I think some of the biggest games in the future are the ones that can really leverage the social experience and go just beyond the game itself.
That's super exciting. Thank you very much, Steve. Really, really fascinating to hear about that. And obviously, I think all of us are going to be going up and signing up to those beta test groups and stuff as well. Thank you very much for that.
Thanks, Tamara.
All right, folks, so staying with us, we've got some last little quarter coming up now, really, really exciting. We've got our final panel here, which is going to be talking about solving the world's problems together, obviously very much aligned with our topic for the day around tech for good, and some fantastic panelists obviously joining us for that. And then finally, you get to see some of those really exciting startups as well. So we've got our London Bootcamp, we've got the pictures coming from the startups there, as well as the voting as well. Do stay with us, we're going for a little break now, but we will be back again soon.
The Swedish Spirit Summit is about bringing the two business communities of Sweden and the UK together.
So we were discussing a lot around the evolution of leadership, what it means to be a great leader, and how you can deliver great bottom line and great profit, as well as really maintaining that trust and building that vision and that purpose for every member of your organization.
So coming together today with like-minded people provides a great platform to continue that discussion.
When you're entering a new market, it's important that you can focus your time on the things that you're best at, that bring real value to your new business. Goodwill gives you time to do that by taking care of all the non-core business activities and making sure you're compliant with UK regulations.
Our team at Goodwill help businesses from around the world enter the UK market, and here are our top 5 tips for setting up in the UK. Jumping in too quickly or with the wrong business structure can become an expensive mistake. Everything takes longer than you think, so be prepared and don't give up too soon. Have agreements in place to protect you in case things go wrong. The best retail space, talent and ideas for services and products can be snapped up before you know it. Meet with people who understand the UK, both from a business perspective and a cultural one. Goodwill have extensive experience helping businesses set up in the UK and is a great place to start.
Welcome back, everyone. And we are, alas, into our last home stretch. We've got one more really exciting panel for you coming up, which is pretty much the topic of today, really, I guess, isn't it? Solving the world's problems together. Before we finally go on to see those exciting startups that we've been talking about all afternoon, the London Boot Camp with the pictures and the voting as well. So kicking us off with that panel discussion, we will have Oscar Vestergaard, who is a partner at Antler. Oscar, welcome. Can I see you there today? Hello,
yes. Hello. Everyone.
How
Hi,
are you doing today? Absolute pleasure. Amazing to have you joining us today. And Oscar, you've got a few feathers to your hats, I think, really, haven't you? You're an entrepreneur yourself. You're an expansion specialist and a leader with over 10 years experience in building ventures across Africa, Europe, Middle East, and Latin America. That's a lot of really exciting traveling. You co-founded Beamer, and I've been with your Beamer folks before. Really love that organization, British Interactive Media Association, and you're also a global leader in mobile insurance with 26 million customers, and have worked at Spotify, Kinnevik, and Universal Avenue. What a group of experiences there, really exciting. And I think you're going to take us into a really fantastic panel now. So over to you, Oscar.
Thanks for that introduction, and I have a very humbling group of people with me today to speak about a super interesting topic. So let me briefly introduce the panelists and the topic, solving the world's problem together. So first up, we have Juliette Bauer, who is the UK Managing Director for Livy, experienced tech leader, successful track record across multiple sectors. So great to have Juliette with us. We also have Bethan Charnley, Head of Strategic Projects at the Center for Data Ethics and Innovation. So great to have Bethan as well. And then we have Sue Daly, Associate Director of the Technology and Innovation for Tech UK. And you've been in another panel before today, so great to have you back. We also have Torgny Gunnarsson, who is the CEO of Combient Group. Great to have you as well, Torgny. And then Tony Young, NHS. So great to have you all with us. And I think we're going to have a super interesting discussion. We're going to talk about problems, but also challenges and how we can solve them. And I want to throw out the question to the group here. Starting it off, what main problem and challenge is that keeps you up at night? And maybe not go deep into the pandemic, but what is it that you're thinking about in your organization today that you can also turn into a challenge and maybe using tech to solve it? I would like to start with Torgny there in the Combient Group.
Thank you, Oscar, and thanks for having me. I mean, there's quite a lot of things to choose from if we kind of look on that high level for, world challenges that we can solve. But one thing that both springs to mind and something that we are actively working with is the challenge around workforce transition. How do we ensure that we can, bring to bear, continuous and lifelong learning, and how do we kind of set ourselves up to make that available for both our employees, but also, people that are coming into work life. I think the way that we kind of do studies at university, as we know today, will have to change to accommodate that. 4 or 5 year long education may perhaps not be fit for purpose once you're done. And I think that needs to also be reflected in work life as we go on. As an example, we have within the Combient Group, we work with about 30 different large enterprises, multinational and global companies. Altogether, they have somewhere in the range of 750,000 employees. And if we ask and speak to their head of HR, they estimate on average that about 50, actually a little bit over 50% of their workforce needs to be reskilled and upskilled in the next 2 to 3 years. And that you cannot do by kind of traditional ways of education and training. So really kind of create that is something that requires both the business and actually society to come together. And as an example now in the current situation where, industry as one example is really challenged, we're also now piloting together with the government and with society, you can say, a pilot around a national learning program to start to address this. So it's a very kind of here and now problem. So that's one example, Oscar.
Fantastic. Thanks, Torgny. And mentioning the collaboration there with the government and importance. And I want to also leave the same question then to Tony. The challenges you're thinking about and the big that we have ahead of us.
So I think the NHS would actually agree with what's just been said. Workforce, we just published our people plan. We've identified that actually the health, the well-being of our entire workforce, even we were looking at this even pre-COVID and looking at how we could make the NHS, I think it's the world's largest employer of professionals with over 1.4 million people in our workforce. How can we become the absolute best place to work? I don't think we've got all the solutions ourselves internally, and we're very much looking to work with partners. So that's not just in workforce, of course, that's in a range of other things, many of which I think we're going to hear about from other panel members on the great uses of technology that have really been catalyzed because of the current situation we find ourselves in. But one of the things I think that lots of people are realizing is that what we've done in the past might have worked really well then, but is it going to serve us so well for the challenges we now face? Particularly looking at the bottled up demand there was in healthcare. We know lots of people didn't seek advice in the timely way that they might have done. And so there's quite a lot of things we need to get on and deal with. And actually, just making us all work faster and harder and doing more of the same, I think is going to leave everyone exhausted. It has been a really challenging, tough working time. I'm still a frontline clinician in the NHS, despite one of the national leads at NHS England. So I think workforce has been identified really important and a key priority for us. How we utilise technology to try and transform healthcare. I think next week at London Tech Week, you're going to be hearing from our Secretary of State for Health, who's going to be making some exciting announcements around what we're doing in embracing technology, particularly around artificial intelligence. So yeah, lots of challenges at the moment, not just from the current emergency situation, but also how do we transform healthcare moving forward, but lots of opportunities, but we know we have to work in partnership across different sectors to make that happen.
Fantastic, thanks for that. So I want to let Juliette come in and sort of representing health sector on the private side, and what's your opinion about workforce?
Private side, but also an ex-colleague at the NHS of Tony's. But yes, so here at Livy, obviously we've been working across kind of 30 different countries providing digital healthcare. So it's been a pretty kind of difficult to believe time in a way. But I think the main challenge that we're looking at, of course, is how can we improve and, of course, maintain during coronavirus access to healthcare. And that is for all. So not just for some groups of society, but for all. Clearly a super important challenge right now. And I think, clearly requires a lot of collaboration with the public sector, with the NHS, of course, in this country, but also other partners, pharmacies, and, other partners across the system. So a really challenging time. As you'd expect, we've seen quite a lot of growth in digital uptake. But I think, as Tony said, there remain some quite significant challenges. So last week, there was a YouGov study in the UK, and it said that 53% of people said they found it harder than ever to get a GP appointment. And we don't want that to be the case. We want people to be able to access healthcare in a timely fashion. We've seen recently a growth in people accessing primary care for mental health challenges. We know there's a lot of challenges to come with coronavirus, so the challenge isn't over yet.
Thanks for that. I would also like to hear from Sue. What do you see now as the main challenges currently and beyond?
Yeah, I would obviously agree with the points that have already been raised. And the topic we're talking about is solving the world's problems together. I think one of the opportunities is that we are all facing very similar challenges as a society and as an economy right now, of course, with the pandemic in terms of recovery and rebuilding. But there are issues that have still not gone away that we will all have to face. So climate change, how we are going to address the issues in saving the planet, the issue of an aging population, the issues around future of mobility, how we're going to all get around our society and our communities, healthcare, of course, and the future of work. These are big topics and issues which we are all, every country around the world is tackling and looking at how we come up with solutions and how we get this right and how we get what we need to do next right for everybody, not just our economy, but our society. And at Tech UK, we see tech, of course, as having a key role to play. It's an enabler, it's part of the solution. And there's some real huge opportunities if we can come together. So climate change, saving the planet, tech is a real enabler of that. There's some great examples there. We've seen the move to cloud. We've seen people moving remotely using more cloud. Actually, the use of cloud computing can be seen to be more energy efficient than previous, more legacy computer systems. So how could technology help in that area? The future of mobility, we're now looking at drones and aerial vehicles for the future of mobility, not just about, AI and driverless cars and automatic and electric vehicles. There's a lot of excitement there. But then we're also looking at what technologies in the future could be, such as quantum computing and what role they could play. So it's grasping the opportunities and thinking about what comes next and how can technology be an enabler of us all working together to solve some really big challenges, which obviously in the current situation have not gone away. They are still with us.
Great, thanks, Sue. And great that you bring up the data and the quantum computing. And obviously, I would like to hear from Bethan as well. I mean, obviously, data and ethics is then the core of what you do. So maybe you look at these problems differently, or from maybe a data and ethics point of view. I'd like to hear from you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Oscar. And I think to really build on what Sue said, I mean, we definitely at the Centre for Data Ethics and Innovation at CDEI, absolutely in agreement that we really believe that better using data and AI really has a potential for solving so many of these problems across the spectrum that we all share. And I guess the thing then that keeps us awake at night is thinking about, well, okay, if we believe that data and AI are so an essential part of solving these problems, how do we make sure that we have the right environment in place to ensure that not just innovation, but ethical and responsible innovation can thrive? And so the types of things we'll be looking at and thinking about are, okay, so we have this theory that the value of data across the UK is not being properly realised. How do we make sure that the right conditions are in place to enable data sharing to happen, that we're addressing the barriers that are in place, whether they are technical barriers, legal barriers, cultural barriers, or things like, there not being enough public trust as well. And so definitely that's how we're conceptualizing of it. And actually, if we can get those foundations right and make sure that we have the right governance environment and the right technical infrastructure and the right cultural approach to thinking about data and technology in a responsible way, then that will unlock other problem solving across multiple different sectors as well.
Great. Thanks a lot for that, Beth, and great input. So let's talk a little bit more about countries and organizations working together to solve important problems. And Juliette, I would like to hear from you how you think of the role of broad partnerships and buy-in from various organizations, how to get that to solve societies and business. How do you create that?
Yeah, I think what we did see with the pandemic, and of course we're not only talking about the pandemic here, but I think what we did see there was, in most countries, a willingness to start from the belief that working with businesses, particularly tech businesses, could actually help. And that hasn't always been the case. So I think that shows significant progress. And in most cases, in many countries, businesses and tech businesses have stepped up and played a significant role in responding to that. So I think everyone can see the impact that has helped. But I think what we now need to do moving forward is think very carefully about the kind of sustainable models that we put in place, as Tony referred to as well, how we make sure that commissioning models, for example, in healthcare, which is obviously where we're working, are the right ones. And I think what hasn't maybe happened as much as could happen is countries really learning from each other in some of that. So we work across multiple countries, of course, and we can see some of the great things that were done, perhaps in France very quickly. Other things were done in Germany quite differently. We're able as a global organization to see all those changes and then obviously to learn from those and see how we can respond to them very quickly. And I think it would be really good to see also that happening across the public sector. And I think the other point here is now is the time to be ambitious, and Tony will, I'm sure, be very keen to be ambitious. But this is the time to be transformational and to be really thinking, not do we just, how do we change channels and move people online, but how do we redesign the whole of these different spaces to kind of design for a better world. So we're in a really good place to do that. But we shouldn't limit the ambition to kind of what is done now. We should think, what do patients, what do citizens really want, and almost start that design from a new beginning, I guess.
Great. And Tony, do you agree with that?
Well, first of all, I don't want this to kind of become a love-in where we all agree with everyone all the time. So I'm just going to pick up a point from Sue. And I think, because Sue was talking about, and absolutely, sustainability and environment is everything. But I've been working with the Sustainable Development Unit in the NHS. So I'm not claiming I'm a urologist in Southend is my main job, let's be clear, or the job I was trained for, let's put it that way. And they were teaching me about their assessments, and it depends where your cloud server is to actually, if the cloud is going to be the most efficient way of storing it, and sometimes shifting everything to the cloud may actually have a higher impact on the environment. So I think it's not, and I'm not suggesting you were saying it was easy, I'm just saying it can be a really complex assessment as we get these things right, and you just can't assume that. But to go back to the love-in, I do agree with Juliette. I mean, what is so fantastic from my perspective is in the United Kingdom is the ability of people to go from taking a senior role in the NHS and then working in industry and bringing the insights and the challenges she will have faced in her previous role to how can I now work in the commercial sector and then bring that to help us transform healthcare. And Julia, I hadn't thought about it, and that's the point why I love panels like this. We've got an internal program at NHS England about capturing learnings and new ways of doing things. Internally at NHS England, went out to the whole of our workforce, the largest unified healthcare system. We have well over 1,000 responses. I can't remember how many it was exactly of new methods and improvement. We're now assessing those and filtering them all down to see what we might take forward. In those proposals, I haven't seen one, and so I'm going to take it back to them, about what are we going to learn from other countries about this and how can we do that internationally? And of course, one of the linking threads of the world is commerce, because commercial companies work in multiple jurisdictions. and therefore they can help share the learnings with that. So Juliette, that's a really valuable thing to know. And it's one of the reasons why we need to work in partnership, because different insights will be gained from others. So yeah, no, that's a really useful thing, Juliette.
Thanks. I want to let Torgny in as well, given that, you know, working with a large group of companies within the Combient group, and also obviously collaboration is of the utmost importance. What's your take on this?
Yeah, I mean, I'm daringly close to continue the love affair here, but no, I mean, as a first comment, actually, Tony, what you said is super interesting, and you know, I would actually like to learn more about what you're doing with you know, that learning initiative that you mentioned, and pick you up and actually also reach out with the hand to say let's share experiences across countries. But you know, back to your question, Oscar, I think that it's fundamentally important that we do collaborate, and I even think, you know, in the wake now of the C-19 that we are all challenged by, you know, I think there will be coming some good things out from that, because when we can start to, you know, collaborate, share experiences and learnings, you know, in a, let's say that as we do within in our network with the companies that we work with, and we can start to do that across borders. I have a, you know, big belief that by doing that we can also create a very positive force, not only to help us to transform and develop and address the bigger challenges like you know, the climate change, but we can also I think really create a joined up force that can also combat you know, other things that we see today with, you know, rising protectionism and you know, anti-democratic movements, by actually deploying this positive force of working together and achieving things together to address big things. So I think that we have responsibility to also go in sometimes a little bit, you know, unselfishly and actually do it for a higher purpose to get things done.
Thank you, and I would like to hear also from Sue, given the collaboration between different entities in the UK within the Tech UK. What's your point there? Want to bring something?
No, absolutely. Collaboration is important, right? And government and industry have to work together. And I think we've seen that through the pandemic. And I think we're absolutely right in terms of needing to be brave and thinking about what we do next and how we get that right. And government can't do this alone, and industry can't do this alone. But what I would say is important is that we bring along, sorry, I was just thinking, is that my phone? We bring society and people along with us on this journey too. Yes, government and industry have to work together, and we need to. But particularly when we're talking about emerging and transformative technologies that are really going to have a key role. Data, of course, AI, of course, and others, Internet of Things, digital identity. I really think in a socially distancing world has a really key role to play, particularly in healthcare, but in other areas. We're only going to realize the full opportunities of these technologies if we build that trust and confidence and bring people on this journey with us and be part of finding solutions that people are happy to have in their lives and to use in their lives. That I think is going to be key as well. So it's about getting society, getting civil society, getting organizations on this journey with us as well.
Fantastic, thanks a lot. So picked up a few things. We are approaching, the clock is ticking, so I don't want to take too long, but workforce transition is something that is keeping us awake at night and something we really need to deal with. Obviously, keeping the ethical innovation and data as part of this, and improving and maintaining access to healthcare. And this all should be done within a collaborative spirit between public and private. So I would like to reach out with a question to each and every one, just to some concluding remarks. So starting with Juliette, what do you hope to see more of in the future from cross-business and societal collaborations that would be beneficial for Livy? You have 30 seconds.
30 seconds, right, gosh. What I hope to see more of, and I hope this would be beneficial for Livy because we're very patient first, we were started by someone who was a patient, and that's kind of very core to what we do, is a stronger citizen voice. So to what Sue said, I want the citizens to tell us what they want healthcare to look like, and then the businesses and the government, and the NHS, of course, to work together to deliver that, as well, of course, as the workforce and the system. But let's make sure those citizens' voices are loudly heard.
Thank you. And to you, Bethan, with regards to using data and AI in a constructive and responsible way, what's important to consider then for solving challenges tomorrow?
Yeah, great question, Oscar. And I think the main takeaway for me would be around mindset in two ways. I think the first thing is kind of people leaving this conversation today really feeling that ethics is something that they can approach not as a barrier to innovating and using technology, but rather as an enabler, and seeing a kind of ethical framework or piece of guidance as part of a toolkit, which will help people to ask questions of the technology they're building and ultimately build a much better product or service for their end user. So I think that's a really important thing. And I would just echo the points as well around it being a collaborative effort. This is something that needs to be done together. I think what's been clear from the work that we've done at CDI is the more different voices you have in a conversation, normally the better your outcome will be. And that's also true of actually the people who are involved in creating kind of technical and technology solutions as well. The more diversity you have, I think, the better the outcome.
Thank you. And then Sue, continuing to position Tech UK as a leading player and integral part using technology, how will you continue to keep a strong position there?
Well, it's definitely a lot to keep us all busy. I think it's looking at the current technologies that we have and how we can deploy and use them to really achieve what we need to do right now. It's also being brave and looking at the emerging technologies that are coming down the line. They're not new, some of them edge computing, but as we move more into Internet of Things, and as I said, quantum, AR, VR, there are haptics, there are technologies that are coming down the line. Let's think about how we could use those as we move forward. And then the third one is about developing and creating the right environment for whether it's innovation to thrive, whether it's for people to come together and collaborate. It's about creating that environment that we're all moving in the right direction and keep this digital transformation, which we've really seen accelerated. Let's just keep it going and really supercharge us forward.
Thank you. Torgny, what's happening in the Combient group? What's exciting initiatives do you have?
Yeah, we touch on a few things. I think what you should expect is that we will continue to, do what we do in terms of collaboration and knowledge sharing in some of the areas that we touched. What to expect going forward is even more efforts around, bringing technology to bear, as Sue also mentioned, as an enabler for addressing the sustainability challenges that we have. Sustainability needs to be brought in as part of a transformational journey, not only activity in its own right. So I would say that it is and will continue to be a focus area for it.
Thank you. Last but not least, Tony, what do you hope to see more to keep NHS being an innovative player and from cross-business societal changes?
So I think there are a few things. I think people have mentioned collaboration, and that's key. But I run an entrepreneur program at NHS England, and one of the things I teach them is to exploit your competitive advantage if you're really going to make a difference. And the National Health Service in England has stepped up and in this pandemic has contributed to the world through unified research. Whether you were a patient in Tyneside or down in Truro, we could pool your data, and we led the world in showing, for example, that dexamethasone was an effective treatment. No one else could come up with that. So if we can utilize what we've heard of today, our data systems, our tech companies, we can work with the health systems that we have, and the NHS is a willing partner to step forward in those collaborations. Won't always be easy or straightforward, but I'm here, and loads of colleagues of mine at NHS are willing to help in that transition. I think we can do outside of things and try and help bring that data together, those patients, that test bed facility, to make the latest, greatest things available. We cannot do it on our own. We have to work in partnership with industry. So I've been delighted to hear that from industry colleagues on this panel. And I think together we can, it doesn't have to be some new whizzing technology that's a new Nobel Prize. There are lots of kind of bread and butter things that we've seen, haven't we, recently? And this emergency that we've faced has been the catalyst that is helping us accelerate those plans that we're already putting in place.
Thank you, Tony, and thank you, everyone. Great panel, great discussion in a positive and collaborative spirit. So by that, thanks, everyone. I think we are on time.
Thank you so much for that, Oscar. And what an incredible panel to finish off our last of the panels for today. And obviously, collaboration and doing that responsibility around sort of for good together, I think is such an important thing to sort of leave us with as well. So we're just going into our final leg now, and the point which obviously all of you get to be really active there at home or in your offices as well, and you get to vote for our London boot camps. So just as a reminder, so the London boot camp is a one-week accelerator program which is designed for Swedish tech entrepreneurs looking to build a presence and connection with London and the UK. So this is partners with the Swedish Agency for Economic Growth and the UK's Department for International Trade. And we've got, out of the 23 companies who took part this year, we've got an incredible 10 of them who are here going to be presenting for you today. So they're going to be pitching for you, and you can read more about them again, like I said at the beginning, in the digital program as well. You'll also obviously get an opportunity to vote for them. So do keep an eye out for the Zoom icon where you get that vote coming up. That's very exciting. That's where you get to vote for your favorite company. And do remember that you only get to vote once. So I would definitely recommend waiting until you see all of them to make sure that you've got your favorite there. And the voting is going to open shortly and then close about 30 seconds after the last pitches are finished as well. So thank you very much for staying with us. What an amazing discussion, and over to our amazing pitches.
Why should I want to work with you if I don't know that you're investing in my specialty? How do you plan on finding me when there's 20 of us in your city and you don't know the difference between a data analyst, scientist, and engineer? The answer to that's about 50K and 10 years experience. Your ability to be competitive relies on attracting talent that knows what you're about and not having to educate them at the point of sale. Those months spent screening people to rule in and rule out thousands of candidates a month, that can be automated. And we can help you determine 1,000 data points to help you do that. So what do? You work with Adway to determine all those data points to attract those 1,000 new candidates a month. And you know which parts of the budget are yielding the best results, leaving you to choose between 5 of the best in their field, not just 10 applicants. Give Adway a call and we can help you build this.
Hi everyone, I'm Anders, CEO of Asteria. We give small companies and business owners a digital cash flow manager. But I wasn't always the happy CEO of Asteria that I am today. Go back a few years in time, I was a computer nerd working for a bank. I was struck and furious by seeing how enterprise clients managed their cash flow to make millions or even billions, while small companies seldom manage their cash flow at all. I set out on a journey to find the best digital cash flow manager for small businesses, helping small business owners bank like enterprises. Today, we're working with the biggest bank in Sweden and the Baltics, Swedbank, and we're looking for distributors in the UK to help us on our journey. Thank you.
What does the world's biggest streaming service for music, the world's biggest chain for clothes, and the former First Lady have in common? They're all sharing furniture through Bellico. In 2018, we set out to transform the furniture industry and create a more sustainable society. The goal was clear. Bellico would become the leading global player in on-demand services for furniture and interior design. By creating a digital platform that facilitates your behavior, we let our members rent furniture and get help from interior designers. Bellico owns no furniture. Instead, they're owned by the brands themselves, and interior designers gig by being booked through the platform. We do not handle any warehouse or logistics. Every time a piece is rented out, we take a 60% cut on the rental cost. The rest goes to the owner of the piece. To handle this, we automated all the processes by creating an operating system. We call it the Bellico engine.
A massive transition to a low carbon economy is about to take place with enormous investments. And we are Climate View, and cities are our clients. Now, every city that we meet across the globe, they want to become carbon neutral, but no one knows how. By using first principles of physics, we break down the city's overall climate goal, carbon neutral by 20-something, into operational targets, standardized KPIs. And since cities are surprisingly symmetric, they are open to sharing data. This means that every city that joins Climate View also contributes to the ever-refined blueprint of a city transition. And this also sets the foundation for machine learning on how to optimize investments. Revenue we drive through licensing fees and premium features. Our first client was the nation of Sweden, and we are now working with cities in Germany, Spain, Sweden, and the UK. Now entering the US, we are Climate View. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Amit Walia, co-owner at Compodium, headquartered in the northern tip of Sweden, Santa Claus territory for those outside of the Nordics. Well, Compodium originates where communications were not secure. A podium was created and Compodium was born. Well, we're specialists in video conferencing, a forecasted market value of $50 billion post-COVID. Our crown jewels is the VideoQ software as a service solution. VideoQ offers military-grade dual authentication video conferencing that addresses identity fraud. Our focus is regulated industries such as healthcare, finance, enterprise, and our go-to-market strategy is via the channel globally. Top brands we've already onboarded, such as Ericsson and the United Nations, with deployments in over 100 countries. Well, why now? Online classrooms, children being exposed to pornographic material, mixed diagnosis of patients resulting in death. Well, Compodium VideoQ saves lives. Our call to action right now is inviting new customers and technology partners to adopt VideoQ and investors to support the company growth. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Stefan. I'm the VP of Strategic Accounts at Fabro. We serve our almost 2,000 customers with the software for project and team collaboration. We develop Fabro for teams that both need a lot of autonomy, yet alignment across teams as they grow. As an example, Riot Games started to use Fabro for a small marketing team as a startup, but today they build games like the League of Legends, and now they have more than 3,000 team members successfully using Fabro for everything from marketing, creation, development, and managing collaboration across all those teams. A company like that are tight on budget and time pressured, but still need to be extremely creative to be successful and to cope with market change, like most companies these days. With Fabro, can you organize your business to be running like a lot of speedboats, still being operated within a fleet with common strategies and goals that are aligned? Whoever listens right now, would love to connect with you. Please send me your LinkedIn request.
Hi, my name is Philip, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of Flary. And what we do is that we create branded games within minutes that could be played on any channel globally. And to give you an example, it could be a game with Subway, where you're building your own sub. And the reason we do this is because marketing in general is turning into a digital landscape where brands only get a few seconds together with the consumer. And there is lots of research showing that this is not giving the brands the desired effect. With our games, brands instead get several minutes together with the consumer, giving them a 15 times higher effect than the traditional marketing. So 15 people instead of one is remembering the message. We work with plus 100 brands such as Unilever, Microsoft, and Spotify on 10 markets in Europe and Asia. And we are now looking for brand partners in the UK. And I'm Philip, and I'm from Flary.
I'm Charlotte Brunius, co-founder and CFO of Phoenix.
Phoenix is a fast-growing platform for funeral planning and estate management. Our journey began 5 years ago when my grandmother passed away. She was a wonderful person, and my family wanted to celebrate her life with a beautiful funeral. I soon realized that losing a loved one is not only about grief. It's complicated and expensive. The average cost for families in the UK is almost £10,000. We founded Phoenix to help families through this in a much better way, with convenient online planning, transparency, and great value for money. We've helped almost 6,000 families part with their loved ones in Sweden's largest cities. We care for 1 out of 15 families in our areas. We've already arranged 100 funerals in London, and we're now fundraising to reach the 700,000 families in the UK that need our help every year.
Hi, my name is Andreas, and I'm the co-founder and CEO of Formulate. We believe that retailers deserve great tools that help them make the right decisions. Formulate offers an AI solution that automatically evaluates past and forecasts future promotions, helping retailers to improve their business. Today, up to 50% of a retailer's revenue is sold on promotion. However, half of these promotions cost more than they make. And why is that? Well, retailers typically run hundreds of promotions every week, and it's this sheer number of promotions that makes it difficult to tell which ones are working and which don't. And analyzing promotions at scale is hugely complex and requires machine learning capabilities that most retailers simply don't have. Enter Formulate. We give everyday retailers the analytics capability once only belonged to Alibaba and Amazon. The largest grocery, pharmacy, and convenience retailers in the Nordics currently use our SaaS solution to improve promotion profitability. Now we're expanding into Europe by developing a network of great partners, and for this reason, we are very happy to participate today.
Hi, my name is Robin, and I'm running a company called WeHype. Did you know that there are over 3 billion gamers worldwide? A huge portion of the world population. These are people that in many cases do not consume traditional media such as TV and radio. At WeHype, we have built the world's largest esport in gaming media by merging all the popular social media channels into one universal media channel, and we help advertisers reach over 1 billion gamers worldwide. We have been running over 2,000 campaigns across 40 countries with some of the leading brands in the world, such as Electronic Arts, Universal Music, Red Bull, and McDonald's. We're currently growing very fast and are now looking to raise our Series A round. Thank you.
What an amazing collection of companies there. I know it's going to be tough to vote, but you've got your last few seconds now, so do get voting if you haven't already. And that really is coming to the very end of our voting. We're going to announce the winner shortly there as well. And coming obviously to the end of our day. I know it's been amazing. It's been so exciting to be joining you. And for our wrap up, I'm going to hand you back to Peter Sandberg from the Chamber to do those final words. And thank you so much for joining.
And thank you, Amali, and thank you for being with us today and for guiding us through the program so well. Fantastic. Really appreciate it. And I really hope you get that driver's license sorted. Something I need to look at myself as well. Shame, shame, shame. And wow, I have to say thanks to all our speakers and panelists. It's been some really interesting conversations today. And I think we have lots to from each other. And I love how we ended the day on solving the world's problems together. I think that's a fantastic finish to it all. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I have the real pleasure of announcing the winner of the pitching session. And the votes have been counted and the results are in. And whilst it was a very close call, the winner is Phoenix. So congratulations to Phoenix Funeral. And if the tech is working for us, which I hope it is, we should have them online. So I just want to ask you very quickly, how do you feel and how was London Boot Camp for you?
Thank you. I feel fantastic. I'm so glad for this opportunity and the chance to meet with so many great people in the UK that can help us with our expansion.
Super, and I have the great honor of saying that as a winner of the pitching session, you get the best gift you could, which is a year's free membership of the Swedish Chamber of Commerce. A warm welcome to you, Phoenix Funeral. Congrats to all the boot campers on great pitches today and for completing this year's program, and also for defying COVID and Brexit, I suppose. The advice, we had sessions earlier this morning for boot campers, and the advice from the entrepreneurs then was pretty clear. It was go for it. And we look forward to seeing you in the UK and helping you along the way. Now it's time for me to sort of wrap up this year's Tech Forum, and thank you for joining us, and thanks to all our speakers and moderators again. Thanks to our sponsors, Danske Bank, Goodwill, Ignition Law, Jämtland Härjedalen, and Zoom. Thanks to our partners, the DIT, the Swedish Embassy, Microsoft Reactor, Startup Sweden, the Swedish Agency for Economic and Regional Growth, the Swedish Energy Agency, Vinnova, and our lovely partnering chambers of commerce. And finally, for me, I just want to say a huge thanks to my fantastic team at the Chamber, led by Matilda Börjesson, Anna Krona, Jonas Eklund, and Sophia Larsson, who all made this week a success for us all. And thank you for joining us, and I hope to see you soon. Bye-bye.
The Swedish Spirit Summit is about bringing the two business communities of Sweden and the UK together.
So we were discussing a lot around the evolution of leadership, what it means to be a great leader, and how you can deliver great bottom line and great profit, as well as really maintaining that trust and building that vision and that purpose for every member of your organisation.
So coming together today with like-minded people provides a great platform to continue that discussion.
When you're entering a new market, it's important that you can focus your time on the things that you're best at, that bring real value to your new business. Goodwill gives you time to do that by taking care of all the non-core business activities and making sure you're compliant with UK regulations.
Our team at Goodwill help businesses from around the world enter the UK market, and here are our top 5 tips for setting up in the UK. Jumping in too quickly or with the wrong business structure can become an expensive mistake. Everything takes longer than you think, so be prepared and don't give up too soon. Have agreements in place to protect you in case things go wrong. The best retail space, talent and ideas for services and products can be snapped up before you know it. Meet with people who understand the UK, both from a business perspective and a cultural one. Goodwill have extensive experience helping businesses set up in the UK and is a great place to start.